Today we're going to talk about the amazing system of the gods of ancient Egypt. When in the 6th, 5th centuries BC, ancient Greek travellers found themselves on the banks of the Nile, they were struck by the closeness that the Egyptians felt to the gods. Herodotus, Strabo, Plutarch, and many other ancient authors with surprise, delight, and probably some kind of apprehension wrote that the Egyptians were a very special people, because when you travel between the great cities of the Nile Valley, the Greeks write, the feeling is that the gods walk somewhere between them. In fact, there is a great truth in these words, because the ancient Egyptians felt the connection of the earthly world and the heavenly world in a completely different way. They believed that all the great cities of the Nile Valley are a reflection of the great celestial prototypes. There is the heavenly Ephyra, there is the heavenly city of Abydos, there are the great shrines in the other world, projections of which appear on our earth. And this projection of the heavenly city on the earthly city, in fact, creates a certain path of connection, some gates through which the gods come to this earth. In many Egyptian texts, it is said that often even goddesses, Isis or Hathor, taking the form of earthly women, walk through a crowd of people, ask questions, measure the strength or weakness of the human heart, test a person on love, compassion, on how his heart is properly filled with the events of this life. It is said that the heart, the great vessel which is inside a person, will be hung on the tombstone. These were the words of the Egyptians for the deceased, the first of which were written on the walls of the Czar's pyramids of Kari in the 25th century BC. And before we dive into this amazing world, I have a sea of beautiful illustrations for you today. As always, I'll remind you of one very important thing. We Egyptologists are happy because not only a huge number of texts from all eras have come to our time, incredibly beautiful, we'll read some of them today of course, but also an incredible abundance of monuments, many millions of monuments, including organics, that is, fabrics, wigs, priests, papyruses with texts, not only stones, not only gold, not only durable materials. So when we dive into the world of Egyptian religion today, you shouldn't be surprised how precisely and in detail we discuss this, and how strikingly the personal experience of piety has been preserved in the culture of ancient Egypt, because the personal story of a person who somehow met the world of gods, experienced a shock, and left an honest confession about it in hieroglyphic text on the wall of his tomb, is a very common example for ancient Egyptian culture. And of course, when we talk about Egyptian temple texts, they are often monuments of the highest level of worldliness. And when we were talking about the goddess Isis, there were many hymns of Isis, and today I'd like to please you too. So today in our lecture we'll hear the famous hymn to God, the Immaculate, 13th century BC. Surprisingly, it's not published at all. That's why we'll have such amazing immersions, including written religious monuments of ancient Egypt. Yes, Herodotus in the 5th century BC correctly said that Egypt is the gift of Nile. And since the first months of his birth, the Egyptian was involved in this giant annual cycle of the great river. Actually, the name Nile itself came from the Greek Nilos. The Egyptians called their great water artery Iteru, the river, or Iteru-a, the great river. When in the 15th century BC, the famous conqueror Pharaoh Thutmose the Thoth came to Mesopotamia and saw Euphrates, the Egyptian troops were shocked and called it the Great Circle. It was another great river that flowed in the opposite direction of the Nile. It was amazing. Once a year, in the middle of July, after intense tropical rains in the area of Lake Tana, tropical Africa, the Nile was flowing, and the Egyptians called it Hapi, the great spirit of the river, the spirit of Androgyne, which was depicted as a man who brings all the gifts of the Holy Valley to the victims. At that time, Egypt was immersed in religious holidays that lasted sometimes more than a month. Then the river flowed and left the famous black eel, which was the key to the fertility of the valley. In Roman times, Egypt, even in its most hungry years, fed the entire Roman Empire with its honest bread a couple of times a year, because that was the fertility of the Egyptian land, violated after the construction of the dams in the 20th century. Now we see the Nile and Luxor, the ancient Ephora, the great mountain of the west. The colour blue is an amazing feeling of one of the greatest rivers of antiquity. It is here, on the banks of the Nile in Upper Egypt, at the turn of the 5th and 4th millennia BC, the ancient Egyptian culture begins to be slowly born. In general, the first Egyptian temple that we know of is located on the border of present-day Egypt and Sudan. It is called Naptu Playa. These are standing vertical stone pillars which in miniature resemble something similar to Stonehenge. That is, it is an astronomical monument, and according to the organic remains of the settlement that serves this temple, we know that this is the middle of the 6th millennium BC. This is the oldest Egyptian temple. Of course, all those sanctuaries, cities, religious centres that we will travel through today are the classical Egypt of the pharaohs, that is from the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC. And here we should understand one very important thing. In the classical Egypt of the pharaohs, there were 42 provinces which were divided into Upper and Lower Egypt. Initially, these provinces rose to those small proto-states, proto-principalities, which in the 4th millennium BC fought with each other until this united political Egypt was formed. And I'm not interested in this political story, but in the fact that in the centre of each such principality, there was a great ritual centre, the capital. And in the capital, there was a story about a different deity. So when the country united, all those deities united into a giant Egyptian pantheon. But let's immediately throw out a couple of books of good Soviet religious scholars who wrote that these centres allegedly competed with each other, that they fought for some advantage. This is not confirmed by the Egyptian texts. Yes, when one city became the capital of the whole country, naturally the main deity of the city, Ptah in Memphis, or Amun in Thebes, or Rav in Heliopolis, became a national form of deity. But there was no competition, and moreover, when we look at the authentic texts, these stories of cities about deities complement each other. And often in the Memphis temple of Ptah, and the texts that came to our time, it said that all these manifestations are different forms of manifestations of the eternal God. And in one city, during our journey, we get to know one part of his essence. In another one, another. In the third one. And his essence is completely unrecognizable. The Egyptian religion, as we all know, is what modern religion calls genotheism. That is, all the Egyptian texts speak on the one hand about the great, eternal, unrecognizable God. They call him Epithet, Neber-Jer, the ruler of everything to the limit. The name of this deity is unrecognizable, but in the process of creation, he disintegrates into myriads of deities, all of which are the essence of his body. Different deities were in different systems of coordination, and we're going to talk about this today. Naturally, in every major Egyptian religious centre, in almost every city, there was a concept of the creation of the universe. And they didn't compete with each other either. Look, the basis of our Western worldview is built, as a wonderful German religious scholar Jan Aschmann said, through the union of either white or black or this or that, and we constantly oppose some phenomena trying to find the truth in our intellectual search. The Egyptian worldview is built through the union of both. The sky is the great eternal waters, and it's also a great cow that flies into the universe, and it's also a woman that bows down to the great heavenly meridians, and the Egyptian says that human consciousness is small and imperfect, and only through the unity of symbols we can more or less come to an understanding, at least partly, of some divine phenomenon that is inaccessible in its full form to human consciousness. There are stories in Egyptian texts about, for example, how a mighty magician gets a book written by the hand of the god Thoth, the god of wisdom. We're going to talk about him today. He rewrites this book because it's not enough to read it, because what you read will be learned by your mind, and let's say by your soul. It's more complicated in Egypt, but you're still connected to this body. So the magician rewrites the book with ink of a certain colour, dissolves it in beer. Beer is a national Egyptian drink, and drinks it in order to get the magical component of the text into the body. What the body got and what the mind got coincide. The knowledge is updated, and then the book is taken without asking. The gods are angry because the seal of divine peace is broken, and the man stands in the centre of the Nile Valley, and for a few moments, as the text says, he suddenly sees the boats of the gods. He sees the movement of the planets. He begins to understand all languages of birds, fish, animals. He sees the whole universe and goes mad, because his mind is unable to contain the divine knowledge he asked for. There are two amazing moments in the ancient Egyptian pre-Hermetic book of Thoth. There are two amazing moments in the ancient Egyptian pre-Hermetic book of Thoth. When a simple earthly man, he's called Meresh, it's translated as the one who loves knowledge, it's a symbolic name. And he literally torments the poor god Thoth, who has a sea of patience, because he asks for this and this and this. A man is always thirsty for something. He's not able to contain his patience. And at some point, God is patient, of course. And this man says to God Thoth that he knows that there's a book written by God with universal secrets, that he wants to penetrate these universal secrets. To which Thoth gives an amazing answer. This is a direct quote. "Oh child, look, this is a papyrus flower. This is the sea. Watch out for it. The edges are covered with reeds. No one knows the length of these shores. Swim in these waters when God allows you." When God allows you. The second moment, then again Meresh learns something, and he of course improves himself in the process of dialogues with the god of wisdom, and he learns that there are secret chambers where great shrines and magical objects are kept and so on, and he asks for a key, and Thoth gives a brilliant second answer. "Watch out, child, these chambers are like a hot oven. The one who hasn't experienced the heat before will burn his fingers there." Absolutely amazing answer. So this subtle system of interaction between man and the world of gods has been built up throughout the millennia of the ancient Egypt. But at the same time, we have to understand that for different categories of people, depending on their dedication, their knowledge, there's available knowledge and there's forbidden knowledge. And sometimes when we go to the temple of the god Ammon in Karnak with our honest feet, we don't understand one simple thing. 95% of the ancient Egyptians during the existence of this temple never stepped on these halls, the sacred halls that were intended for the high priesthood, for the pharaoh, for the high priests, because it's a forbidden great shrine. And on the one hand, we say to ourselves, well, it's a shame for a person who hasn't acclimated to such beauty. But on the other hand, Egypt gives an absolutely amazing concept that the main temple of man is the heart. And in the 25th century BC, the great Egyptian sage Ptahait will say, put your God in your heart. It is the place of your prayer. There's no dogma, no book, no strict canon, and no mediator between man and God. In this situation, the priest is the keeper of tradition, the keeper of sacred knowledge, and the temple itself becomes a grand machine intended for attracting the spirits of gods and goddesses into cult statues, for the continuation of the existence of this world, and for very important functions that we never think about when we think about ancient Egypt, in order for the world to come to an end more slowly. Ancient Egypt sees the world not from the perspective of progress, but from the perspective of degradation, because a person loses his heart by replacing it with worldly knowledge, a technology that kills a person who is capable of communicating with God in his heart. And the text goes on to say that God is in your heart, a village chapel, a desert, any place where you hear God, that's where your temple is. And the grand house of God, Ammon in Karnak, is on the one hand the house of God on earth, and on the other hand a colossal treasure of accumulated knowledge written on the temple walls. Anyway, all the concepts of the creation of the world of Egyptians were based on the idea that there were the original waters of the ocean of great chaos. Ancient Egyptians call it Nun. He's the father of all gods, and the sun is born from this ocean in one form or another. Before that, as the Greeks would say, I'll use the Greek terms of chaos. At the moment of birth, it's theos, the moment of creation, and then there's space, the world we're going to live in. But the Greeks were struck by the fact, and we're probably struck by it as well, that we have our human logic, this little ruler we're trying to measure the universe with. And we were told that there was chaos, there was nothing. The sun came in, everything came into existence. And all of a sudden, the Egyptian text says that in the body of the father Nun, who is both the father and the mother, for he's the great androgen, everything was pre-existent. But it hasn't come into existence yet, for the divine word hasn't been uttered yet, and the structure hasn't been proposed to the world in Russian. Everything was already there, but it was in a state of sleep, as if it hadn't been awakened. And the Egyptian creation is not just the creation of the universe, it's the awakening of the world and the structuring of the world. Sky, earth, that's what we're going to talk about now. This is the Nasser Lake, the very south of Egypt. This is the sunrise. The colour is really like this. There's no Photoshop here. And every morning, picture an ancient Egyptian sees is a small day model of the world for him. Egypt used to say that the world can end at any moment. You can't predict the will of the gods. The sun will stop. The world will return to the original state of Nun, the ocean, chaos, and Hika, the god of infinity. Nothing dies, nothing is destroyed, everything changes. There will be a single God who will create a new universe at some point, and everything will flow there and take on a new form. You know, when someone sent me a picture of a Hubble satellite, when one galaxy is destroyed and a stream of matter flows into a new one, I described it because it's an absolutely accurate illustration of ancient Egyptians' idea of the infinite worlds. This is how this very moment of sunrise depicts the Egyptian relief. This is the 13th century BC. This is the underground catacombs of Assyrian, the great shrine of Abydos. This is the question of what the Egyptians saw. Let's see what's ahead of us. So, the God of millions of years, Nun, the great father of chaos. We are happy people in ancient Egypt. Everything is written here. I don't even need to guess, the text says it all. Right here, the name of the god Nun is next to his head. And he raises a 1,000,000-year-old golden boat, in the middle of which is the sun. And like a great scorpion, we'll talk about it later, and like a solar disk on both sides, like goddess of horizons, Nephthys and Isis hold the sun. Isis on the right, Nephthys on the left. And then other gods of the solar disk accompany the new sunrise, which is likened to what the ancient Egyptians called the Septuagint, the original time of creation of the universe. Every morning, sunrise is a new repetition of this original creative act of the Creator God. I've already started talking about texts, and here's the oldest complex religious text in the history of mankind, and not only in the history of ancient Egypt. These are the texts of the pyramids, the earliest versions recorded on the walls of the pyramid chamber of the Czar of Unis in Saqqara, 524 BC. Saqqara is the famous necropolis of Memphis, which is located 30 kilometers south of modern Cairo. When you're in Egypt, if you haven't been to Unis, you can easily visit it, and you have to do it, because no picture conveys this feeling. You've just seen the scorching Egyptian sun, an underground passage. You descend into the darkness. Then your eyes get used to it, and you come to the first chamber, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by these walls of text, and wherever you turn, you see these famous religious incantations, and if you raise your head, you see the ceiling covered with images of the starry night sky. And for us, this is a unique opportunity to get acquainted with the text, which lived at least for many centuries before it was recorded here. It's written in perfect form, and it's perfectly clear that before it appeared here, it was a part of the oral tradition of the priests for a long time. It's not just a description of the burial ritual of the Tsar, it's a text that contains a huge number of fragments of various Egyptian myths, legends, representations of the world of gods. When you know the language, it's an amazing feeling, because your eyes stop at a fragment and you start reading it, and all of a sudden these walls start talking to you from the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. And the beginning of the text is arranged in such a way that when we imagine a Tsar lying in a sarcophagus, if a mummy opens its eyes, it's clear that the spirit will come out of it and see. And there's the first phrase, O Unis, thou shalt not die, for thou shalt not die. So the fear of death experienced by the soul experiencing the transition is recorded at once, and then the text brings it out. Because for us, the entrance to the pyramid is the entrance, and for the pyramid, it's the exit. When it comes out, the soul of the Tsar will fly to the northern part of the sky, to the ancient polar star, when the polar star in ancient times was the star of Tuban, another polar star. And there, the great gates of the sky will open, and there will be ancestors, gods, a blessed duat, a place of praise, as the ancient Egyptians called their afterlife. So this is how the burial chamber of the pyramid looks like. This is the Tsar's sarcophagus, the image of the Tsar's palace where his entity will live. And literally every centimetre is covered with text. And here it is, the starry sky. And the ancient Egyptians believed that especially the polar stars are the visible, immortal souls of the ancestors. which shine as a guide for the journey of the Tsar's soul. That's why, by the way, the exit from the majority of the pyramids is to the north, because there should be a direct path for the Tsar's journey to another world. What kind of God is the light that appears at the moment of creation of the world? There can't be a single answer because it's unrecognizable. Here's one example. By the way, this amazing golden Tsar's pendant is from the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. It's the 13th century BC. It's a sun baby rising from eternity to infinity. I'll explain it in a moment. Being born on a flower of water lily. I'll say right away that before the 6th century BC, there wasn't a lotus in Egypt, a pink Indian lotus. It was brought to Egypt by the Persian troops very late. There's no lotus in the traditional ancient Egypt. And what we see here is not a lotus, it's a water lily, either white or blue. And the white lily is the very lotus in which the sun is born. Initial and preliminary waters. Chaos. There's the bottom, there's the source of everything. There's the root from which the stem rises. A bud is born from the stem. A flower opens, and on this petal there's a sun baby. It's young, it's perfect, it's capable of creating this universe. This is a version of the city of Heliopolis. And in Heliopolis they'll tell you something else. Well, there was darkness, and initially there was chaos, and there was nothing in existence yet. All the primordial gods were asleep, and a sacred white bird appeared, Negigur, the great Gagatun, and in the image of this great Gagatun, God starts to scream, and this scream pierces the silence, because silence is death and scream is life. And in the mysterious scream, he calls the secret names of things, things that come into existence, because everything has its own secret name, and calling things by their names, God makes them manifest in this world. And there are many such examples. And this diversity of Egyptian religious philosophy and symbolic thought, of course, amazes. Egypt is Africa, as we all remember. All the traditional cultures of Africa, Egypt is no exception. They worship the mother goddess from ancient times. The primordial Egyptian culture is patriarchal. But, according to the archaeological monuments, the first images are divine. They are connected with the cult of the mother goddess. And the image of the father god will appear, well, a little later, 250 years later. But still, the image you see on the right is the 35th and 34th centuries BC. It's the middle of the 4th millennium BC. It's the famous image of the mother goddess, the so-called woman from Mamari. But it's the place where she was found. Now it's Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Museum in the USA. She has wide hips because she's the mother who gives birth to the world. She has defined breasts because she's the breastfeeder of milk. Milk in the Egyptian tradition is considered the drink of immortality. It's what the mother feeds her baby. She has a falcon's beak instead of her face because she's the ruler of the sky. It's a golden falcon that flies in the boundless space of heaven. Finally, her arms are bent like the horns of a cow. Once again, a hint of her main sacred animal. Her legs are not expressed because, as we see in other images, she's dancing. She spins around dancing and creates this world. This is the first variant of the many tens, hundreds of thousands of images of the mother goddess that came to us from the culture of ancient Egypt. What's on the left is no less interesting. This is a young thing, the 15th century BC. This is an ostracon, a piece of limestone on which the artist makes a sketch, so that later such an image would be made on the ceiling of the royal tomb. This thing comes from the Valley of Kings. What do we see here? This is the great mother of heaven, the goddess of heaven, Nut. In ancient Egypt, notice the anaphylaxis, which was quite rare in Egyptian art. Next, she has defined breasts because she's ready to feed and she's pregnant. What's in her womb is the sun, the solar disk, and inside the disk is a baby holding a finger of the mouth as a sign of her youth. And this is the baby of the new day. There was a big research at the time, not Russian but French, and it was fully proven that this prototype, through the late ancient times in the early Coptic Church, became the basis for the canon of the mother goddess Znamenia. It was also the basis for the many canons of the mother goddess Digitria in Byzantium. This is where early Christian symbolic imagery was taken from, and there's nothing surprising about it. In addition to the images about the creation of the world by the deity, in which the feminine features are clearly shown, there's a very interesting story. I'm retelling the texts of the goddess Neith and Khnum Vesni. Neith is one of the most ancient goddesses of Egypt. She's androgynous, and it's said that in her essence, 2/3 are feminine and 1/3 is masculine. Let me give you another beginning. She begins to create the universe, and imagine, I always say, if you have a good imagination, close your eyes and imagine. Hollywood will never show it to you because it's fantastically beautiful. The boundless sea of chaos, the golden throne rises from it. The mother of gods sits on the golden throne, and she begins to create gods and spirits. She pronounces their names. She has a divine sweat that's fragrant. She sprinkles it, and the spirits emerge from the splashes. So this is how the universe begins to come to life. And then she gathers gods and spirits and says that now she's going to give birth to her main baby. She's slowly giving birth to a son-born baby and puts him on her lap. The sun god is the foundation of the world, the foundation of the universe. The sun god is so small in relation to the mother of gods that he can't see her face. He only sees her huge arms and knees, and in fear, not seeing his whole mother, he begins to cry and throws his tears back into the darkness. In ancient Egyptian, many symbolic connections were built on the basis of the similarity of words. Romich means tears, and Remik means people. In Egypt, according to one of the concepts, people are born from the tears of the sun god, and their way of life, their task, is to come to light from the darkness behind the sun god, which is in front of his face. And Nate's mother realizes that the creature she considers to be her main baby is finite. She can't even comprehend this universe. In anger, Nate spits into the abyss, and from this spit, the great snake chaos, Apop, is born, which is essentially the brother of the sun. He's going to chase the sun forever. The sun's going to fight him. And this is the first antithesis, the sun and the snake fighting each other. But in this snake fighting story, according to Egyptian texts, at 6 a.m. in the other world, the sun and his companions beat the snake Apop. I'm going to show you such images today. The snake is cut in half, the chaos is defeated, the sun god moves on, and at this moment the merciful goddess Selkit appears, who stitches the snake with huge stitches, because even if the snake is defeated, time will stop. In this fight, there's a meaning of the time of infinity. There's no good and no evil. There's an opposing beginning, which we try to define with our human mind, but it's not defined by such concepts. Nate takes the form of a divine cow, and here on the right is an amazing monument from Tutankhamun's tomb. It's the 14th century BC. The lower part of the golden cow's head is covered with black resin. because it's the same cow which rises from the original darkness. There's no sun on the monument between the lyre-shaped horns, you'll agree. We'd like to see the sun here. We already know that it was depicted so often in Egypt at the funeral of the dead. This is a functional monument for Tutankhamun. The spirit of Tutankhamun has to sit on its head, grab the horns, as the sun god Ra does in the relief on the left. And at this moment, the cow jumps out of the cosmic darkness. In ancient Egypt, the verb to create is written in the form of an I hieroglyph, to create. Imagine, it's absolutely amazing that the great mother of gods conceived the whole universe. She thought it all through in her heart. The text says, and at the moment when the cow jumps out of the cosmic darkness, she opens her eyes and everything she conceived comes into existence at the same time. It gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? And at this moment, she jumps out of the cosmic stream to the already created earth, as the text says, lands in the Nile Delta, where later the famous city of Sais will be founded, one of the cult centres of the goddess Neith, and the stream of water that flows from the ocean of chaos after her feet falls on the ground and becomes the Nile. One of the most beautiful legends of creation, because when you look at Egypt from outer space, it looked like a flower of a water lily with a leaf. It's a leaf from the area of the Fayum Oasis. In the centre there's this blinding spot. It's Cairo in the ancient times, Memphis, and myriads of cities, each of which told a legend of creation in its own way. My senior colleagues who found Egypt in the 60s saw the Nile stream, they saw the Great Chappie. When the entire Egyptian land, at least the Nile Valley, unlike the desert, became an African Venice, the caravans were inappropriate. Boats appeared. This is the Luxor area. You see the divided meadows, fields, when the Nile flooded everything. This amazing system of reproduction of the fertility of the Egyptian land also reflected in a great number of symbolic and religious ideas I'm going to tell you about. Moreover, look, this border is very clear. Between the cultivated fields and the world of the living, it's the Nile Valley. And look, it's clearly the desert, it's the Meidum, it's the pyramids of Zarosnov, the father of Cheops. And all that's there is the Kemet, the black land, the Egyptian land, the living land, the flourishing land. What's closer to us in this shot is the Deseret, the red land, the lifeless land of the desert. There's a war between the land and the sky. There's a war between the black and the red land. The war is illusory from our point of view because the sands of the desert are stepping on the land. It happens because a man with a bat came and helped the black land to take the piece of the red one. They are original, both the black and the red land, but the man who makes the action becomes the one for whom these great forces of the universe are fighting. If we look at this incredible dream of gods and goddesses, there are more than 3,000 gods in the Nile Valley if we take some local provincial gods and goddesses. Nevertheless, all of them can be divided by gender and given these symbols. Any man's god's name could be given, adding a sign to it as a sign of the divinity of the sacred falcon on the right. By the way, take a look at this unique monument. It's the 4th century BC. It's a choir, a great god of the sky, standing on a sign of gold. This sign of gold in this case symbolizes immortality. Immortality. Any goddess's name could be given by a sacred sign of a snake, a cobra, not just a snake, but a cobra on the left. Choir is a name that can be translated from ancient Egyptian as upper, higher. You know, sometimes an ancient Slavic word, an archaic word, can be translated into Egyptian, but it has certain meaning which we've lost a bit. Upper, upper as higher. This clearly conveys what's in the name of the golden falcon, because it's a golden falcon flying over boundless space. Manly, military, worthy, tough, victorious. It's all in it. When we read books on ancient Egypt, we often find a word there, Uri. Pharaoh had a cobra Uri on his forehead. Uri is a Greek word for a sacred cobra. In ancient Egyptian, it sounds like Iaret. Iaret is a reverse form of the name of the sun god, Ra, written with a feminine ending. The son of the female genus, the one that's from the sun. Powerful, soft, all-encompassing, protecting, immensely dangerous, incinerating, and at the same time feeding. These are the main functions of the female deity. So the conversation about cobra, snake and falcon is a conversation about two basic ancient principles that were connected in the Egyptian religion, with the goddess and the god. And in the end of the 4th millennium BC, and we know it from archaeological research, there were so-called votive caves under the temple. These caves were used by the earth to build a sanctuary. And there's this temple of the goddess. There are dozens of different materials. Cows and cobras are buried there to sanctify the earth. And vice versa, the male deity has falcons, some other images, so that the house becomes appropriate for the deity. In the Egyptian story of creation, there's a very important role of the idea of the original fragment of the land, which by the will of the creator god, by the will of Demiurge, appears from the ocean of Nuna. It always has this pyramid-like shape. Moreover, on the contrary, a pyramid, any pyramid, is a likeness of the original hill of the land, which was called Ben Ben in the Egyptian language. The root of Ben goes up to the verb uben, which means to rise, to be born. So it's something self-giving. What you see in front of you is the top of the royal pyramid of the 19th century BC in the Cairo Museum from the black basalt. And look, here it's on this plane, and this plane was turned to the east where the sun rises. Here's a winged solar disk, then two eyes. These are the eyes of the dead king who resides in his pyramid, who sees 3 times the hieroglyphic Nefer, Neferu, beauty. He sees the beauty of the sun, and the prayer written in these 2 horizontal lines is on behalf of the king Menemet III, who is buried in this monument. She prays to the sun for the gift and opportunity for the king to see the sunrise every day, to see the resurrection every day. Because just like the sun rises on the eastern horizon, the soul of the king will rise to immortality. In the ancient city of Heliopolis, Heliopolis, as you know, is a Greek name, the city of the sun. In ancient Egypt, the city was called Yunu, literally Tverdinya. Here's another very good old Russian word that perfectly fits the Egyptian meaning. There was an idea that there is a sacred stone, Ben Ben, the main stone of the sun. It's clear that we're talking about this in a very amorphous way, because there are great sad things in modern Egypt. When you arrive in Cairo by a plane, your beautiful Cairo airport, Almaty, is located not on the territory of the Temple of Ra in Heliopolis, but on the territory of the Temple of Ra in Heliopolis. Unfortunately, it was almost destroyed by Cairo, and we only know from the texts and images that Ben Ben was of this shape that looks like the top of a pyramid. Maybe it was a meteorite, probably it was a physically real sacred object, but this stone reproduces a huge number of Egyptian architectural structures. Here are the pyramids of Giza, which in fact repeated the moment of the birth of the world every morning. We can perfectly imagine that in ancient times the pyramids were decorated with an excellent white limestone. It was disassembled in the Middle Ages for the construction of Cairo. The tops of the pyramids, as I've just shown you, were covered with gold. Imagine an inner fog. The pyramids are in the west, and this fog, like the waves of the moon, as soon as the sun rises, these golden tops start to light up on the pyramids. On Ben Ben, the sun is born again. The world is renewed. The world is purified. The world has conquered the darkness of the night. The image of the god of the sun is rectangular, of course. For the Egyptian culture, it's very diverse. And I'll try to show you the main images of the god of the sun. I can't help but stop and look at the level of the images, at the fantastic relief. This is the temple of Seti Kaingi in Abydos. It's the 13th century BC, and the king Seti himself, in his kneeling pose, offers the god of the sun Ra, Ra, or Ra Harakti, Ra, the horde of two horizons. He has a falcon's head, a solar disk, and from this solar disk Arad, his female hypostasis, descends. Ra is at noon, when the sun bows to the western horizon. Time influences it. Time is the main enemy of men and gods. That's what all the texts say. He becomes an old man, Atum. Atum literally means completed. He wears the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, the long beard of gods. And the new world, Seti, puts this crown on the cult statue of the god. Atum is one of the forms of the creator's god. When the sun is born on the eastern horizon, it's Scorpio. We'll talk about it later. So we have the morning form, Scorpio, the afternoon form, the god Ra, the god of the sun in triumph, and the evening form, Atum, the god of the evening sun. There's also the form that travels around the world at night. It's Euphra, or the flesh of the sun. It's always depicted with the head of a sheep. It's confused with Amun, with Khnum, but ancient Egypt is an absolutely precise knowledge. It's all written down. All the names, all the ritual formulas. You just need to know how to read hieroglyphic Egyptian letters. It's all written down. And on the one hand, here on the right, Seti opens the gates of the sanctuary with the form of the night sun. On the other hand, the figure is quite interesting. Look, the sun disk is Ra, inside Scorpio is Hephaestus, and the figure itself is Atum. Three single forms of the sun combining the morning, the afternoon, and the evening forms. Why is Scorpio so important for Egyptian art? Because it embodies one of the most important things I'm going to tell you about. For now, let's look at it for a minute. It's a suspension from Tutankhamun's tomb, a fantastic monument of beauty, 14th century lazurite, which, by the way, was brought from Badakhshan, Nagori, Afghanistan. And this is the morning sunrise. Scorpio spreads its wings and soars into the sky. The morning sun, the symbol of which is Scorpio, is called Hepri, which means self-emerging, self-giving. It embodies the principle of creation of the world. The principle of creation of the world, Heperer. This verb has no analogy in European languages at all. We can translate it and try to create something new by decomposing itself into many components which are in total a single whole. God the Eternal creates the universe by disintegrating into myriads of gods, all of which are parts of him. Heperer is the principle of creation of the sun, which is embodied through Hepri. So when you have a ring with Scorpio, it's protected because it's the principle of creation of the world, and there's an additional magic spell on the belly. When Scorpio is put on the breast of mummies in order to cast a spell on the heart of immortality. And on the belly there's one of the chapters of the Book of the Dead, which we'll discuss today. It's a particle of the sun god on a human body. So the principle is very important. Why did the Egyptians see Scorpio as the embodiment of this principle? It's very simple. Scorpio rolls a ball of manure, not just like the sun. You'll find it in all books. A myriad of his likenesses will come out of this ball of larva, Heparer. Or, for example, there's another principle of the sun, fish tilapia, which is a species of Nile perch. It has one very interesting feature. When it sees danger, it quickly sucks in water with all its little ones. When danger passes, it spits them out. Heparer, a myriad of his likenesses come out of it. So here, in fact, all these symbolic ranks of the Egyptian myth come out of a very precise observation of the Egyptians of the nature of the Nile Valley. And here, in such simple phenomena as the manure beetle, the symbolic principle of creation of the universe is laid down. God is pre-eternal in his various hypostases. He's always androgynous. There's always both masculine and feminine in him. And together with the sun god, his half, his mother, his daughter, in general, in the simple feminine principle of the sun, there's always Heparer, Heparer, Heparer. The yard of the mountain. The mountain is a falcon, a hawk. Where does a hawk fly? In the sky. The yard of a falcon is the sky, and the name of the goddess, Heparer, through the symbolic rank, is the heavenly space. She's a very ancient goddess, at least from the 4th millennium BC. She's the great goddess of the sky, the one who has all the secrets of the female heart. The true embodiment of femininity, Nubit, the golden goddess. This is a goddess incarnated in sacred stones, in turquoise, in amethyst, in sardalic. And this image in front of you is, of course, amazing. It's a tiny pendant. It's about 8 centimeters in height. It's azure, not turquoise. It's the 9th century BC. It's kept in the Cairo Museum with these encrusted eyes, obsidian, gold. It's an amazing image. When a god is in a state of sleep, male and female are equal to each other. As soon as he wants to move, something starts to take over. Either the female becomes more or the male. At this moment, the initial harmony changes and the movement begins. In this case, we're talking about the sun. Ra is the male incarnation of the sun, and Kadkor is the female. One of the names of Kadkor is Raid, the son of the female genus. The female genus comes from the name of the sun god. And here we are again in Abydos. Ra Karakti, followed by Kadkor Usaz, one of the main forms of Kadkor. And Usaz is literally the rising goddess of the dawn. You see, this red marionette begins on the eastern horizon of the sky. Before it is Venus, the morning star. We'll talk about it later. It's inextricably linked to the sun. And the most important stage of the journey of the sun around the universe is the night path. And the famous texts found in the royal tombs of the Fives in the Valley of the Kings, such as the Anduit, the Book of Wrath, the Book of Caves, they all tell about how the sunbed intersects at 12 o'clock at night, overcomes the chaos, and being renewed, rises on the eastern horizon. You see the relief from the tomb of the king Seti I, the 13th century BC. The sunbed in it is Euphra, the night sun, with the head of Ovna, you know that. And the gods pull the boat by the rope of time. The first image of time we're facing now. As you can see in the boat, there's a naos, a box of reliquaries, a sanctuary in which the god himself is wrapped by a snarling snake. To avoid confusion, the name is written there. Meccan, the snake of the infinite movement of time. And two more figures. The text says that there are many gods on the boat, but they're not visible. But these figures are the main ones, the fundamental ones, and they must be shown. I'm going to show you a large version. Here's the snake. Next to it is written Meccan, the lower two hieroglyphs. And on top of it is the hieroglyph that touches the head of the first figure. Sia, the pre-eternal wisdom, the pre-eternal knowledge. And in fact, everything that has knowledge already exists. It exists as a great heavenly sphere, and it is actualized, manifested on earth through the gods, through the wise men, through revelations. If you've ever been interested in Indian culture, there's a term in Hinduism called Kala Vijnana, the sphere of the original knowledge. It's exactly the same as the ancient Egyptian Sia. The figure behind it is Hika, the god of magic. Magic is an art that transforms what the sun god wants to transform. The original wisdom, the original magic accompanies the sun god during his complete danger and journey to the other world. The rarest image, the incredible beauty, in my opinion, is actually a huge wall of the burial chamber of the tomb of Tauset, the pharaoh of the woman of the 12th century BC. It's a foretaste of the sunrise. A giant bird with the body of a falcon flies up. It's the sun. It has an oval head. It's the night form of the sun. Then the space of the pre-eternal water opens up. From there, two halves are born from the initial Hom Sush. Here's the black upper triangle. It's supposed to move and join. The sun in the form of a disc, a scorpion and a baby up there. And the great hands of the mother of the universe push the sun into our world from this last hour and into its peaceful existence. You might ask me here, why the oval? There's an idea in Egypt that apart from the fact that the pre-eternal god Naberger is divided into myriads of gods, he has two most important halves. The first half is the sun god, and it has the status of the soul of the pre-eternal god. The soul is Ba in ancient Egyptian. The oval in ancient Egyptian is also Ba, Ba and Ba. So for someone, the head of a ram, for someone who knows, is the soul of the pre-eternal god. Yes, it's Ammon. The other great Egyptian god, Osiris, the ruler of the other world, which we'll talk about soon, is the body of the pre-eternal god. At 6 a.m, after the forces of chaos are defeated, the sun will join its body. That is, the soul of the pre-eternal god will join its body. Demiurge will appear for a few moments in order to create one more cycle, then they'll disintegrate again, and each of them will perform its function in this universe. That is, this flying bird is a view of the sunrise from the other world, from the other side. There are two such images left from ancient Egyptian culture. This one and another one in the tomb of Zar Amir Nipta, that's all. And accordingly, this royal tomb, the burial chamber, is for a single person. It's not intended for the human eye. I've already mentioned the morning star. According to ancient Egyptian, Paneker Duawa, that's the divine rising soul. In Egyptian mythology, it's represented by a phoenix, the great bird Bennu, which is simultaneously the god of the soul, the god of the heaven, and the god of Osiris. The heaven and Osiris are different gods, but they have one soul, and that unites them because they, in their totality, embody the principle of creation of the predestined God. Here's a fragment of a painting from the tomb of Zari-Renefer, 13th century BC. This is a sunbed. Here's the sun disk itself, the phoenix Bennu, and the strange symbol in the form of a blackwood stand, a knife, and a cross. It's a hieroglyph of Shemsu, the satellites. They represent the invisible satellites of the sun god. The question is, why are they invisible? Why can't they be represented and so on? It's very simple. They are myriads because every bright soul after justification, wants to become, dreams to become Shemsura, the satellite of the sun god. And the artist Irinafer is depicted in this way. It's a magical image, a message for the sun god, that maybe he took the immortal essence of this person in his posthumous state. The sun creates the world. The first pair of gods that were created are twins. They embody moisture and air. Air is Shu, moisture is Tifnut. They, in turn, get married and give birth to the next pair, Geba and Nut. Nut, in front of you, is the mother of heaven, Geba. Her husband is the god of the earth. A very important point. It's a thing that distinguishes Egypt from the majority of other cultures. Usually the mother of the earth and the father of the sky. But in Egypt it's the other way around. The father is the earth and the mother of heaven. And Shu, their father, divides them, raises the body of his daughter Nut over Geba, and creates the air that is life. Because all life in the world is transmitted through Chai and Nang. Chai and Nang is the breath of eternal life. You breathe, you live. You don't breathe, you don't live. You sound, you speak, you laugh, you sing. You're alive, you're silent, you're not alive. These are seemingly simple things, and quite simple. It's impossible to bypass them. These are the basic principles of life. They are the ones that are the basis of the symbolic order. The pectoralis, the suspension on the chest from the tomb of Tutankhamun, glass paste, emerald, gold prayers. 14th century BC, Cairo, the Egyptian Museum. This is how the classical, many times repeated system of the interaction of the earth and the sky is shown on the papyruses. The first one is the Papyrus Nes Pakashuti of the 10th century BC, with an arch, a great celestial meridian, goddess of the sky nut. Under it lies her spouse Geba, because the principle of creation of the earth is connected with ascension. And Ben is at the same time the phallus of the god of the earth, who's ready for creation. He ascends, just like sprigs rise from him. But there's more. I'll show you the coloured squares to make it easier for me to describe what's depicted here. So the big red rectangle at the bottom is the figure of the god Geba. Everything is sign, no need to invent anything. And the airspace between the body of Nut and Geba, the golden boat of millions of years. In the centre of Ra, which is depicted in the centre of the boat, there's a huge ostrich feather. The ostrich feather is a symbol of the god Shu, the god of air. The fact that he's holding the feather means that there's air around me. We breathe, we live. Behind him, the guardian of the stern of the snake, the crown of Upper Egypt, is Aret, the symbol of the goddess. And the second most important goddess is depicted here in the green rectangle. She's holding the symbol of the life of the Ankh, the basis of life, and she's wearing an ostrich feather on her head. So this is Ma'at. Ma'at is order, harmony, social norm, universal laws of the existence of space, the right verdict of the judge, and the inner morality of man. And when we read Egyptian texts, we constantly hear about two sisters of Ma'at. There's the earthly Ma'at and the heavenly Ma'at. And if your earthly Ma'at in your heart corresponds to the divine sign, her heavenly sister hears it, they resonate, and this resonance opens the gates when you listen to God in your heart. And if there's no Ma'at in your heart, the gates won't open, the prayer will be fruitless, and God won't enter the temple, because the temple is not worthy of God. Think about it. We're talking about things of the 2nd millennium BC, and we're so used to the university courses of that epoch when man was the basis of the world. Yes, he was the basis of the world in the ancient East, Man is a temple, and the heart is the Holy of Holies, the Setoret, and God dwells in it. You know, when you look at medieval texts after that, it's so sad because we realise how much we've lost from the original ancient attitude to man. But I'm not talking about that. I'll show you another Ma'at, a very beautiful painted relief from the tomb of Queen Nefertari, the beloved wife of Ramses the Great, 13th century BC. She's winged, and Ma'at is an omnipresent goddess, like the air. She's everywhere, and she's trying to stop the aging of the world, to stop the degradation of the world. Yes, she's wearing a reed cap. Ma'at has a contradiction called Isafet. You'll often find in books that Isafet is a lie, a bad word. Isafet is distorted truth. It's crooked. Again, the ancient Russian words will help us. Crooked, distorted truth is worse than lies, because it looks like the truth. Yes, it has a hidden meaning. And everything we see in this world is a terrible war between Ma'at and Isafet, and it's up to you to decide who wins in your heart, because it's a war that's going on both in the outside world and inside you. All the ancient cultures of the East, in Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, the ones I'm more or less familiar with, this freedom of human choice is a great gift from the gods. Sometimes the gods envy a person for having such an incredible freedom of choice, but it's a responsibility, my friends, at the same time. And a person is judged for this choice, not for some sins, very simply, but for the choice. What did Ma'at and Isafet choose? What's your choice in this life? Very beautiful Egyptian images show different forms of the moment of the transition of the sun from one world to another. This is a unique image. This is Assyrian's dungeon. It's completely closed to visit. This is the 13th century BC. This is the mother of Nod, the mother of heaven, who swallows the sun. When she swallows it, the sun goes to another world. Accordingly, on the eastern horizon, she spills the blood of the dawn and gives birth to the sun on the eastern horizon. And on the world of Duat, the world of praise, it's not a tomb, it's not underground, it's on the other side of the sky. It's a space for ancient Egyptians. It's just a wall, a sarcophagus of the 4th century BC with a Duat spirits. No imagination is enough to describe what's there. Moreover, Egyptian texts say that many creatures that live there, when they come to a person's dreams, a dream is a space between our world and that world. It's a separate big concept. They take a form which cannot be perceived by human consciousness. And before that, they had completely different forms. The central frieze, the spirits are depicted there. They have lizards and snakes in their hands. Snakes are forces and lizards are a lot. It means that there are many of them and they are sitting in the void. They are incorporeal and they don't need any thrones. The book about the tomb was a separate topic. It's an amazing space. Anyway, the main figures in this post-mortem, or the other way around, journey are the sun. And in this image, also from the 4th century BC, God and the goddess visually hold the sun baby, the base, and the hybrid. It's not a drop, it's white bread. It's the East hieroglyph. It's the beginning of the sunrise, and you see the sun is already flying above the baby. Above the male figure it's written He Hu. Above her it's written He Het. It's the male and female half of the god He Ha, the god of millions of years. He's androgynous like all the original deities. And look, it turns out that in Egypt there are 2 times. The first time, the infinity, it's in our world, it's Nehe. The sun is constantly rotating. In that world, the unchangeable permanence, Jet, is eternity. Nehe is the time when the sun exists, that is the soul of the pre-eternal God. Jet is the unchangeable time when Osiris exists, the body of the pre-eternal God. In our world, the pre-eternal God and the new principle of creation arise when Ra and Osiris, Nehe and Jet are united. In our world, the male is the embodiment of the time Nehe, and the female is the embodiment of the time Jet. From the union of Nehe and Jet, a new life appears. And look how amazing it is. The whole ancient Egypt is built on this. The same principle is associated with the birth of a child in a family couple and with absolutely colossal paradigms of the universe here and there. A Hermetic text will say later, I'm literally quoting ancient Egyptian things. Everything is built on the same principle. Well, they appear in the village hut in different ways, with different degree of globality and in a different world of gods. Let's go back for a moment to what we've already discussed. We've come to this moment with illustrations. The body of Osiris. And you see the solar disk descends on it. And between them, the rays of the solar disk turn into signs of Ankh, life, and Uaz, power, strength and action. At the same time, this union is praised by birds with human heads. This is Ba, the souls of the blessed dead. And at the bottom, there's a winged ship that holds the solar disk in its hands. There are many other symbols I won't go into now. I'll focus on one important phrase I've just said. And you weren't surprised, and I expected it a bit. For the Western man, they're dead. For the ancient Egyptian man, they're eternal. When we read a text about a man who passed away, the prefix Osiris is added to his name. It's a sign that just like Osiris conquered death and became eternal, for the ancient Egyptian man, those who passed away are not dead, they're gone. They're gone to another form of existence, and from that other form of existence, they interact with us in Necropolis perfectly when we want them to. I'll talk about it a bit later today. For now, a few words about Osiris. He has a greenish, bluish flesh. This colour is called Uaz. It's a symbol of eternal life. It's the colour of a sprouted grain, and the grain that's sprouted is the hypothesis of Osiris Nepreus. Think about it for a second. Traditionally, we got used to the idea that the world of the gods is somewhere far away. You take a palm and put a sprouted grain on it, which seemed dead. It was a dry grain. You watered it, sprinkled it with earthworms, and the green sprout grew. And now you have the secret of the gods on your palm. This is Osiris, the principle of eternal life. When the pyramids are written on the walls of the burial chambers for the first time, the signs carved in stone will be filled with green pigment because it's the colour of eternal life. At the same time, look, we already know that Osiris connects with the sun. He has a solar disk on his large crown of Athena. I'll show you a smaller image. Here he is on the throne. The relief of the same Nefertari is carved from the tombstone. In front of him is a giant sacrifice with various offerings. His epithets are written, and several points are important to me here. First of all, the sceptre of the Tsar's power, his green body. It's embossed because he's the first god who passed through death and won death. But what I'm particularly interested in is the apokala. And this apokala is embedded in the sign of the infinite rotation of the sun, Shen. What does the apokala do? It gives movement to the air, the breath. That very Chai Nang. Osiris is the Lord of breath, the Lord of life, and the God of death, and everything related to it is from him. I won't tell you this legend in detail. You know it very well. I'll remind you in a few words. Looking at this amazing monument from Louvre, Osiris is in the centre of the Lazarite colony. Next to him is Hor, his son-in-law in the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. On the other side is the great Asida, his great sister and wife. And in the history of Osiris, who died at the hands of his brother Setha, Asida, Hor, and another god Anubis, who we'll talk about later, were reborn. After all, it's not only the universal mystery of life and death that is shown, it's also a simple family, simple human feelings. It's not for nothing that it's said in the text that Isida is the most divine of people and the most humane of goddesses. It's an amazing play on words, because she went the path of a widow. We talked about it in detail in the last lecture on Asida, so I'll remind you about it in a few words. The ritual of embalming. At the foot of Asida is Shen, the infinity. At the head is the mummy of Nephthys, her sister, and her alter ego. Asida is seen with a very active mind. She's a very active goddess. Nephthys is inert. She's often blind. And the text of the pyramids gives an absolutely fantastic image. When the royal dead body, prepared for burial, lies down, endless hair grows from the head of the goddess Nephthys, which becomes funeral hair, wrapping the body. And on the one hand, she gives the body a new shell, because without the shell, which destroyed death with its blow, the body can't recover and can't go on with the transformation. And on the other hand, the text of the pyramids says that one of the main tasks of the soul is to break through the funeral hair, through the hair of the goddess Nephthys, so as not to get entangled in the material world. An absolutely fantastic image. Another important picture. Let me remind you that when the burial of Osiris is taking place, the body of the goddess is already assembled. The body is moving forward on its little legs. It's always going to necropolis, and ahead of it is a seer showing the way, and the black jackals of the desert are dragging the god's body. And behind it is Nephthys, blind, beating the drum, because it's a sound, it's a movement. Visually, it's death, but the sound of the drum shows that it's life. So one symbol shows the truth of the other. Osiris, as the Egyptian hymns say, is the Egyptian land, and the foundation of the land is its spine, the great stopjet. And on this body of Osiris they sew, and the cities stand in the temples. And the hymn of the 13th century says, "But do not say that you are tired, for you are great. When the end of the Egyptian year comes, and it's June, July, it's summer, it's wild heat, the body of Osiris, the Egyptian land, shatters into fragments, because Seth, his brother, the god of the desert, cut him into 42 pieces. Then, from one single tear of Isis, the flood begins." And even in the late Coptic period, in the 19th century, this night of the flood was called the night of one tear. In the Coptic period, they actually kept the memories of this ancient tradition. What will water do? Water, despite the fact that in the Egyptian religious tradition, everything dry is masculine, and in medicine, everything liquid is feminine. Water will fill the Egyptian land, and the body of Osiris will grow into a single, soft, fertile flesh. To the question of the cut body of Osiris, and very simple things embedded in this global symbolism. A few words about Anubis. He's very important to us here. Well, firstly, he's also the son of Osiris, like Horus, but he was born by Nephthys. And in fact, both Horus and Anubis have different principles of masculinity. The Egyptian heir to the throne before the coronation, he was called Enepu, Anubis. Anubis is the son of Nephthys, the son of a goddess, very important but inert. He always prepares the kingdom. And Horus, the son of Isis, the son of an active goddess, ascends to the throne. The role of Anubis is very great. And look, I've already said that in the Egyptian text, the idea of death is a stab, a violation of the body from which the soul came out. When the body was embalmed in the ritual of embalming, the priest who makes this cut on the body symbolically depicted Setho, of course. Then Anubis, Isis, Horus, they find parts of Osiris's body, make the first mummy, but there's no integrity and there's no sacrificial impulse. Something incredible is supposed to happen for life to win. And then Anubis takes off the living skin in order to embalm his father's body in it. There's this idea, Nebrid is a special symbol, and this first skin is put on Osiris's cut body, and they merge together. This is the first important principle related to rebirth. I'm showing you, of course, the statue of Anubis from the tomb of Tutankhamun. Everyone knows it. It's incredibly beautiful, but few people know that it's taken out of the pedestal. It's hollow. And there were sacred objects in this pedestal which were used for the famous ritual of opening the mouth and eyes. It's the most difficult ceremony of 75 elements, which was accompanied by the burial of the mummy. The main idea is to bind the body back to the spirit, to give the spirit freedom, and to start the movement of the spirit to the other world. But nevertheless, to overcome this terrible gap which was made by the knife of death, so that the transformation of the soul of the deceased would happen safely. It's taken out completely, and all these objects are kept in the Cairo Museum. Of course, the most important principles of Sid and Nephthys are protection. The wall of Tutankhamun's ark, Nephthys on the right, Sid on the left, their symbols on their heads, and these great golden wings of the goddesses are also burial veils, also a symbol of the highest protection. Because the goddesses cover Osiris with these wings, and as they cover Osiris, so they cover Tutankhamun from death and every other departing one. And in this case, Tutankhamun is the departing one. I can't help but remind you of your favourite images. Let's take a look at Isidore a little more. One of the most striking images of the goddess is the Abydos of the Church of St. Peter. She's in a triumphant form. She's holding a ritual broom called Sister. She's ringing the bell of Sister as a sign that the silence of death has receded before the ringing of life. And here's the whole scene of Isidore, the priest who performs the duties of the choir. And it says here, choir Yunmutev, the choir of the support of one's mother. And Seti finds deified in the image of Osiris in front of him, exulting in the hymn of Saint Ladin is ringing the bell of death and the ring of eternal life. The second most important iconography of the goddess is the moment of feeding the baby. It's a stunning image from the 4th century BC, Nelson Atkins, the museum in Kansas, a prototype of all the later medieval forms of the image of the Mother of God. Let me remind you, in case you didn't hear me back then, that until the 15th century BC, for example, in the Abbey of Saint-Germain-des-Prés, ancient Egyptian bronze images of the goddess were kept. And there was a special dictum of the Pope concerning the adoption of black goddesses with horns holding the baby in the hands. They were confused by the horns because they didn't understand the symbolism, but it was this image that laid the foundation of all the forms of the Mother of God with a dark face. Madonna de Montserrat and many other goddesses all ascend to the local forms of the cult of the goddess Isidore, the great triad of Abydos, Osiris and Isidore, the choir, and this is what I've been talking about in the example of the church ritual. Osiris is the first to bring the figure of the goddess Ma'at to the sanctuary. It's a sign that all his deeds correspond to this concept of the truth, and they correspond to the Ma'at of heaven. And now look how interesting it is. You let out the mat. You let your heart return to the mat. Yes, the resonance took place. God heard the prayer, or rather entered your heart. The same here. If the mat in his hands corresponds to the mat of the universe, great gates are formed, and the spirits of gods and goddesses enter their specially prepared occult statues. And if we took the Western line of examples here, we'd say that the good god Osiris is the bad god Set, no matter what, as the coronation group of the Pharaoh Ramses III, 12th century BC. On the one hand, the crown is put on by the choir, the son of Osiris and Isis. On the other hand, there's Set, and he also puts the crown on him. Here, in this composition, the choir is a symbol of Lower Egypt, that is, of the delta. Set is a symbol of Upper Egypt, that is, of the valley. The choir is the fertile land of Nile. Set is the red land of the desert, full of useful, excavated sacred places, oracles, and much more. And we'd probably stop here and say that the choir and Set, as an antithesis, are complementary gods to each other. Yes, but it's a bit more complicated and deeper. I'll tell you about it now. Well, first of all, yes, there's a struggle between the choir and Set, because when Osiris can't be reborn, the choir fights with its uncle Set, and during the battle he tears out his testicles. The symbolic sequence is very clear. Chaos, Set. Chaos can't be reproduced later. It's infertile. And during the battle, Set tears out the eye of the choir. Do you remember? Ira does the verb to create. That is, the choir becomes kind of inactive at that moment. This torn out eye becomes one of the most famous symbols of Egyptian religious culture. Before us is a pendant from Tutankhamun's tomb, the eye of the choir. The eye of the choir is literally complete, holistic. It's very important. And according to the legend, the choir that came from the battlefield lets its father Osiris swallow this torn out eye, the most precious gift, a piece of itself. And only after that, Osiris begins to be reborn, because he didn't receive a piece of banal flesh, but the highest sacrifice, which is possible. And if we look later at the Egyptian temple, in the ritual, it's described there. I bring you bread. It's like the eye of the choir. I bring you butter. It's like the eye of the choir. I bring you meat. It's like the eye of the choir, as the highest sacrifice that can be brought. And there's one very interesting, very beautiful philosophical thing. The eye of the choir is the basis of Egyptian mathematics, because each part of eyebrows, eyelids, these lower structures correspond to certain fractions. Somewhere 1/3, somewhere 1/4, somewhere 1/6. And if we put all these fractions together, which are included in this mathematical code, we get not 64 64ths, but 63 64ths. By the way, this is borrowed from the iconography of the falcon's eye. This curl is 1/64th, because only in the world of gods there are 64 64ths. And in our world, in the world of people, there's 1/64th. It's not enough. We're imperfect. It's amazing, isn't it? Mathematics, it would seem. And here we have an understanding that this 1/64th is a person's aspiration to gain, to find the perfect world. And let's get back to the monument. The beginning of the eye is Wajid, the great cobra, the ruler of Lower Egypt. And behind her is Nebet, the neck, the great mother-in-law of Upper Egypt. These two heraldic goddesses are in the Egyptian texts from the 4th millennium BC. This is a deep antiquity. And now, having understood the symbol of the falcon's eye, let's get back to the monument. So, the Cairo Museum, Ramses III, the falcon, and Seth crown him. Because in the other world, where there are 64 64ths, the falcon and Seth are one deity, Herufia. He's sometimes depicted in the royal tombs. He has one body, his name is inscribed, a recognizable head, Seth and Chorus. And the text says, because when there were no two things yet, there was Herufia. And when things were gathered, there was a struggle, Chorus and Seth. And what happens when there are no two things? The Egyptians believed that there was a golden age after the original times, when gods were with people, when there was one hell, not divided into heaven and earth, when there was no death, when there was no day and night, when there was no dual structure of the world, which led to human betrayal of gods and division of the world into heaven and earth. So, when you see a huge number of myths about how Seth fights with Chorus, Chorus fights with Seth, and the essence of this world is so embodied in it. But here, the essence of the world is different, where there is no such struggle. Another very important point. On the one hand, Seth is the murderer of Osiris, and on the other hand, here you go, 10th century BC, Papyrus is the great singer of god Herebin of the Cairo Museum, the sunbed. Who beats the serpent of Apop? Seth, because Seth embodies a high, fierce, military, manly nature. And here the angry god sticks a spear into the finger of the serpent. The serpent is cut, and then the goddess Selketh comes with a thread and a needle, remember I told you, and will sew it together, because otherwise the world will stop. Let's not confuse the serpent of Apop with other serpents. In this fragment, also from the same time, 10th century papyrus home Osiris lies on him, and he's surrounded by the serpent Mehen, the serpent of time. And Osiris, first of all, rises from sleep. It's a gesture of rising from sleep, and his sex organ is outlined because he was reborn, he will create. And who strives for him? The sun and the scorpions. So it's a foretelling conversation about the creative power of the pre-eternal deity. Another papyrus, also different symbols that speak about the same thing. On the right, baboon. It's the so-called Ba'u Yabit. It's the souls of the east, like the jackals are the souls of the west and the creatures of the funeral world. And in the east, when the sun rises, the monkeys sit, clap their hands, rejoice that the sun is rising, talk to each other. That's why they are the symbols of this ascending world. The eye of Hora, Ujat, is the symbol of immortality. Two lions that form the hieroglyphic horizon, Shuitefnut, the primordial gods of air and moisture. The great heavenly mother in the image of a cow, the head in the centre, and everything that's inside is her body. She's pregnant with what you see above, and the sun is shining there, and in the centre of the sun is a divine baby. He has K, his vital force that the whole world is endowed with, and it's depicted as two hands. And he's also surrounded by a snake of infinity, Mechan, biting his own tail in the Ouroboros pose. The first image of Ouroboros in ancient Egypt appears on one of Tutankhamun's arches. That is, it's the 14th century BC, and it's already a part of the concept. That is, this image was clearly there before, but this is the 14th century, the first date of the famous snake of infinity biting its own tail. The snake biting its own tail is time. Time was such a forbidden category that there were special priests in the temples. Their title was Anuit, the watchmakers. Not everyone was allowed to wear a watch, as I've just said. So how was time measured? The daytime, of course, the sun watch, the gnomon, the two planks are placed in a peculiar way, and the shadow from the sun falls at a risk. It's a simple thing, but this is more complicated. This is a clepsydra. These are temple watches made of alabaster, 14th century BC, the epoch of Menhotep III. The cone is carved Everything is covered with images of different holidays of the year. At the same time, the monument was badly damaged. By the way, the alabaster is translucent and all the images were filled with blue glass. It was very beautiful. This is the main clepsydra of the Karnak temple of the god Amun. Let's look inside. This is what's inside. In addition to the godly symbols, there are risks. And here are the signatures of the month and the season. Because we understand that night hours in the summer are shorter than night hours in the winter. Water was poured there. A float was placed. And accordingly, according to the water flow, one or another hour of the night was marked. And it was very important for the temple because it was the basis of many night temple ceremonies. Also, at night, they observed decanal constellations. These are the constellations of the northern part of the sky, which were observed in a special way, and the appearance and departure from the ecliptic of some major stars was also shown by one or another hour of the night. But this is a completely separate topic. The clepsydra was not allowed to be seen by many because the very concept of time for the Egyptians was a great and dangerous sacred place. I'm going to show you some absolutely unique things. This is a piece of the wall of the tomb of Ramses VI. What you see in the centre is the god of the pre-eternity inside the clepsydra of the universal time. No more, no less. It's all written down. It stands. Fire seeds of the future day flow out of its phallus. There are signs of a baby girl and fire. On the sides of this clepsydra are female figures, each of which is held by the sun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Long figures are the goddesses of winter hours of the night. They multiply, of course, by 2. And short goddesses are the goddesses of summer hours of the night, and they are supplemented by this god, Imsi, who monitors the correctness of the night time. Time is a divine principle, despite its danger, and it comes from the pre-eternity God. The main finale of every night is, of course, the sunrise. Here's a fragment of the Book of the Dead by the papyrus of the priest, the singer of Amon's god, Anhai. It's the 11th century BC British Museum. Huge bread, ribbons and a feather. And this central pedestal with a falcon on it is a symbol of the West because this night transformation took place through the West. A green falcon. And here, look, baboons are dancing. And here is the sunrise, Isis and Nephthys, with their hands in the pose of prayer, in the pose of adoration. Below, the soul of the priestess Anhai is depicted twice. That's her. Various spirits and so on. I'm interested in another question. Do you think the sun can be green? It can be green for an ancient Egyptian. Wait a second, what's that? It's something technical. So it can be green for an ancient Egyptian. It can be green for an ancient Egyptian. Here is the green sun, and the falcon itself is green. For one simple reason, in Egyptian art, the symbolic colour has priority over the real one, the green colour of eternal life. And here the sun itself is not shown red or yellow, but what it embodies, the eternal life cycle. Another very important deity of the Egyptian pantheon is the bird. The great master of Memphis, the patron of art, Remeslun, the great master of all masters, but his main function is a bit different. It's the god of materialization. And what's it about? In the text of the famous Memphis theological treatise, it said that everything is created, but the problem is that the world needs the appearance of gods. A person needs rituals. A person needs interaction with the subtle world. It's the bird as the master of all materials that are hidden in the ground. He creates perfect bodies for the gods. The principle of making cult statues and investing in cult statues, because thanks to what he does, the statues become attractive bodies for the spirits of the gods when they enter the cult statues. He has a jeweler's cap. It's an amazing bird from the tomb of Tutankhamun. It's wooden, covered with gold. Notice his whole body is covered with feathers. It's the wings of the goddess protector. He's depicted as embalmed because he's the master of the secret of the earth. He has a jeweler's cap. He holds a staff in his hands, which combines the Ankh, life, Jed, the pillar of Osiris, invulnerability, and a scepter with the head of Satka, oasis, strength, and power. If we look at the complete form of the statue, look, it stands on a very strange pedestal. The rectangle of this pedestal is cut off at the back at a right angle, and at the front it's slanted. If we look at this pedestal from the side, we get a rectangle with a slanted front part. It's the hieroglyph of the goddess Mat. He's Heteb Hermat, the one who's truly peaceful. His support for his feet is the law of this world, the divine law by which he fulfills, materializes the divine by temples, statues, and so on. And at the same time, the cult of the god Ptah does not compete with the cult of the god Ra. We'll come back to this later. A very beautiful relief by Francis III. He worships Ptah in his sanctuary. It's the 12th century BC, which is why we love ancient Egypt so much. The colour is so authentic. From the 12th century BC, it's a royal tomb in the Valley of Kings. And there's one very important thing here. Every Egyptian god in his city has other gods with whom the main deity forms a triad. In Heliopolis, Ra is himself Ra, his wife, the sun goddess, and a moustache, you've seen it, and he has a daughter there, Hathor Nebet Hetepet, the form of Hathor. Ptah also has a family, and this family is very interesting because the wife of Ptah is Sekhmet. The goddess is translated as mighty, great, angry lioness, a symbol of rebellion, a symbol of rage, the ruler of all epidemics and epizootics. Her servants are the fiery arrows of the USSR carrying diseases. At night they come to her and put you, mysterious spirits, strangers, nightmares, for one simple reason, that once the gods were in a situation when they were betrayed by people, and in the famous text of the heavenly cow, as it's called, Ra is in shock because he was betrayed by the people he created. And then the gods don't know what to advise him. And in these Egyptian texts, when Ra doubts himself, there's always a source of initial knowledge, of advice, and they urgently call for Nuna, the materialized ocean of chaos from which everything happened, because he knows everything. Everything came out of him. And Nuna doesn't like it. He always gives an angry advice, and the abyss opens under him. Nuna appears from there and says that people need to be punished. And at this moment, the golden goddess Kadhor turns into Sekhmet. She's the same goddess. Sekhmet corrected the people who betrayed the world of the gods, and at some point Ra, because he's merciful to his heart, realized that people are his creation. He's not ready to lose them. And he takes beer, mixes hematite and red minerals in it, pours it on the fields, and the enraged goddess, thinking it's blood, starts drinking this beer. Intoxication, joy, and the sober morning, when she realized that she was betrayed. How many people are still alive? But at the same time, Sekhmet goes to a faraway African country, Bochum, a place where they'll find her. So it's all symbolic, right? And together with the enraged, seemingly goddess, and we understand that it's just another form of Kadhor, life goes away. The flowers stop blooming, trees stop bearing fruit, and the desert begins. Here's a great monument, a cult statue of the goddess Sekhmet, a real one, from the 15th century to the new era, still standing in its own temple of the Memphis Triad in Karnak. If you're in Egypt, you'll find out where Sekhmet is in Karnak. It's closed to the tourists, but we know a lot of ways to open doors in Egypt. You must see it. And let's take a moment to look at this great monument. It has a lion face, a wig, a sun disk, because it's a solar force. It's the power of the scorching African sun. In one hand, believe me, it has an ankh, a symbol of eternal life, and in the other hand, it has a papyrus, which is connected with eternal youth, health, and immortality. So the high priestess of the goddess Sekhmet wears the title of Urzun, the great medicine. She's the main goddess of Egyptian medicine, and the main temples of the goddess Sekhmet are the famous sanatoriums, the most famous hospitals of the ancient world. Because on the one hand, this goddess as a patroness inflicts illness, and on the other hand, as a merciful mother, she takes it away. This is the most wonderful and amazing ambivalence of all Egyptian gods and goddesses. I can't help but enjoy looking at the sanctuary itself. When the sunbeam falls through the window, it's an absolutely incredible place. Yes, all the sanctuaries of the saints, they always have a lighthouse for the light beam to fall on a cult statue at a certain time. There's a grid there just in case some garbage gets in and so on. The principle is very important. We have a body in the pre-eternal God, living in the darkness Osiris in the other world. He connects with the sun and with Ra. This is the body on which the sun falls. It's the same principle, and it's as if the deity is actualized in its form. And so our great Sekhmet, sometimes Tifnut, sometimes Pahet, many different wine-headed goddesses of the same principle. She went to the distant lands of the Bacchans, and nightmare began in Egypt. And Ra turned to Shu, the god of air, and to Thoth, the god of wisdom, with the words that something had to be done about it. The goddess is so dangerous that Ra can't approach her. She ignites him. And then Shu and Thoth take the form of little baboons who go to the unfortunate land of the Bacchans. They find a blazing hot lover. She's a blazing hot lover. This is her official title in this state. Just think about it. She's a violent lady. She's a bloodthirsty ruler. She has more than 700 epithets. And these two little baboons begin to tell her fairy tales, in the literal sense of the word. Egyptian, favourite fairy tales about the Egyptian proverbial Golovkin. And they also tell her what fashion people wear nowadays, and what fashion aromas are in vogue nowadays. What's Ladan doing with them? And what fashion jewellery is in vogue this season? And what songs are in vogue in her homeland? And the goddess's heart is filled with love because she missed the way she had always lived. It's a barren desert here. And then her heart begins to calm down because they awaken love for their native land with their fairy tales. She begins to return to the border with Egypt, where the Philae Island is now the temple of Isis. On the neighbouring sacred island of Abathon, where there was a sacred reservoir, Sekhmet performs a ritual offering, and from Sekhmet comes Bastet, a cat, which is no longer a lioness, but still not a woman. Bastet is fertility, it's sexuality, it's wonder, it's a feminine beauty, it's dancing, music, fun. And then Bastet comes, and Bastet can become Sekhmet at any moment. She comes to Egypt, and there are gifts, everything she wanted, and she takes the form of the goddess Kador. And there's a very cool saying in Egypt from the 4th century. It's called "Fear the cat." The point is that the cat can become not a merciful golden goddess of love at any moment, but an angry, furious goddess. Another important point is the process of reconciliation, and there's a huge ritual of Sekhmet, the reconciliation of the goddess Sekhmet, which takes place in her marriage, because Shu offers her a hand and a heart, and accordingly a divine marriage. This is a relief from the temple of the god Horevetfu. In this version, Hor becomes her husband, and there are priests in masks of falcons and jackals who embody the spirits of the ancient kings of Egypt, the names of which are already forgotten. They carry the symbol of the kingdom in palanquin, and the king becomes a witness at the wedding. His task, I'll tell you, is not very enviable, because he comes to Sekhmet, who hasn't been reconciled yet, and so he brings her a sister, music, his favourite art, and ladin aromas. Yes, ladin is the most important aroma of the Egyptian temple. And then there's this divine marriage. And here's an amazing thing. In one of the texts, it said that the goddess, when she feels the marriage and reconciliation, she starts to change her form. She has a myriad of forms, and suddenly she becomes a huge black scorpion. And at the same time, she has an epithet. She's Sheret and Nawendra. She's a baby, a colossal black poisonous scorpion. And she flows down to earth, and she takes the form of the goddess Tabitha, a very poisonous scorpion. A brave guy, Hur, marries her, and he's told about her fear, and he says, I know her true essence, so this image is temporary and it doesn't cause fear in me. And it's the right decision, because in the process of marriage, she's reconciled and becomes a golden goddess, which flows from her, becomes a medicine which kills all the diseases in Hor's body. And this divine marriage is where the baby of the new day comes from. It's the marriage of the future, and it's what closes the story with this incredible transformation of the goddess. In the temples of the mother goddess and the temples of Sekhmet, among offerings, by the way, this is a relief from Fully. Here's one of Ptolemy's offerings, and a very important thing. You see, there's a baboon sitting there, and there's a strange construction behind him. It's like he's sitting on a semicircular object. It's a float from a clepsydra, a cone-shaped watch. Remember, I showed you the clepsydra Karnak. He gives her a watch, a time of fury and glass. The cycle is over. The baboon, because we don't remember the story about Thoth and Shu, who are making peace with the goddess. Accordingly, Ptah and Sekhmet have a child. The third god of Memphis, it's Nefertum. Very interesting. It's a beautiful, complete name. It's a triumphal form of Nefertum. He has a lion's face, because his mother, Sekhmet, has a falcon on her head, the principle of royalty, and a lily flower on the falcon. The lily flower is the main symbol of Nefertum, and the texts of the pyramids say about it, it's the aroma of Drera, like a bloomed lily flower. You and I remember that all Egyptian gods are ambivalent. There should be both. Nefertum is no exception. It's the god of herbalists and herbalists. It's the god of the secret power of plants. It's the god of medicinal drugs. It's a very perfumery god, and it's the god of herbal poisons, as it should be with all plants. So it's a lion's nature, but it only holds the Horu Ujat, the symbol of immortality. It has a small figure of Zar Sati, rain in its legs, which brings him vessels with wine. No, it's actually an image of a cult statue, and the Tsar brings such vessels to him during the ritual of reconciliation. What is a divine marriage from the point of view of nature? It's the new year, or as the Egyptians used to call it, the Nile has spilled. What does the Nile spill from? The tears of Isis fell, right? The golden goddess of love came back, right? Sirius rose in the heavens because the new year in Egypt coincides with the heliocentric rule with the appearance of Sirius. Sirius is the celestial star of Isis. Happiness begins because she found her husband found his wife, and what does she get in the end? Eternal life, a child. By the way, this is the rising of the sun in the Minyan region. This is my shot. This is real gold, Nikon camera eyes, and getting up early in the morning, 4:30, 4:40 a.m. I just don't go to bed sometimes in Egypt. I sleep in the afternoon. But, you see, gold is spilled because Nubit, the golden goddess, came back to the golden, that is, to the sun god Ra. And gold is spilled in the world, and gold is immortality. And of course, Hathor, she must take her natural form, the great goddess of love. She has cow ears, because the cow is the provider of the sacred milk, the main animal. These are the curls of Hathor's wick, a fantastic monument in terms of beauty. Yes, this is the Metropolitan Museum of New York. This is the 4th century BC. This is one of the most amazing images of Hathor, made of cedar wood. There was a huge wooden larch made of cedar wood for the golden statue of the goddess Naos. And on both sides of the statues, there were 2 such masks which depicted the goddess, which is hidden inside. Question? Yes! Yes, there will be nothing in the desert climate, the 4th century BC. It's quite young. This is a genuine thing in the museum, don't be surprised. This is the charm of the Egyptian climate, that we have such a volume of texts and materials. And of course, this is the principle of the golden goddess of love, which gives immortality to the king. These are amazing masterpieces of Egyptian art, kept in Louvre. This relief is taken from the tomb of Seti I. On the right is Seti. On the left is the great golden Kador. She pulls out a necklace from his neck, which consists of many turquoise beads. With turquoise beads, her sacred stone is rolled up. Shaking it with beads, she speaks of life. He touches life which comes down from her. Her wig is blue gold. These are different forms of divinity. Cobras roar, eagles from the ears, and believe me, this bandage on her forehead means the same thing. Nehik, 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 eternity. She is the sun goddess. This is the eternity of life which corrected death. I can't help but show you Dendera. This is the main temple of the goddess Kador. Dendera, of course, is a modern name, and Unit Tanicheret, the goddess Taverdinia, one of the most preserved temples of ancient Egypt. And as we remember, Kador is the goddess of heaven. So here on the ceiling there are an incredible number of heavenly images. The columns themselves are giant petrified sisters, ritual rags. The capitals are the faces of the goddess, the top of the sister looking at 4 sides of the world, because she is the ruler of the universe. I can't help but show you several fragments from the ceiling. The first fragment is the new year. The central male figure, which is turned back, is Orion, the celestial form of Osiris. He turns back and there is a cow in the boat. And Sita is depicted here in the image of a cow. She has a star between her horns. This is Sepideh, this is Osiris. And between them is a falcon sitting on a high papyrus. This is Hurwaj. This is a symbol of the future. That is, Orion invites Osiris to appear during her heliocentric rise. And this is the birth of a new life. This is the new year. Osiris in Aslava, also the ceiling of Dendera, in the center of Osiris on a lunar boat, because the main planet of Osiris is the moon. The moon in Egypt is a male deity. Egypt is also different from the rest of the Middle East, where the moon is a female deity. On the sides of it are the signs of eternal life, Isis and Nephthys. Once again, the ceiling's fragments. We are walking, and I can't help but show this amazing image, a great lunar mirror in which the goddess will look. In the cult of the mother goddess, there was even a special ritual for wearing a cult statue of silver and gold mirrors. The moon, with its cycle of 29.5 days, is the fastest regeneration, and the moon is a symbol of immortality, of rapid renewal. When the goddess will look, there will be gods, and each step will be higher. These are the forms of the moon, and the deity is the form of the moon at the moment of full moon. The moon at the moment of full moon is the mirror of the goddess, and on the right side is the headless god of wisdom, also the god of the moon. He is not only the god of writing and magic, but also the god of the moon. He keeps this mirror in which the great goddess Hathor will look. I'd like to say a few words about Toto. First, the image of Toto, which is on the left. It's a stunning monument of the 4th century BC. The statue is made of wood, covered with gold, and the head of ibis is made of bronze. It's a very ancient god, and it's not only magic, writing, counting the moon. It's a ritual. It's a method of connecting heaven and earth, a sacrifice logic, a logic that allows you to establish a dialogue with the gods. The ritual of the main temple of the country and the ritual of your little village chapel is all about Toto, and he is always present in various manifestations of his symbols during the sacrifice. The main symbol of Toto is the moon, and the main symbol of ibis that you see on the right is a great masterpiece, the lunar pectoralis of Tutankhamun. What do we see here? A night lake. Nymphs are blooming here. Everything is made of gold, and you see that a golden boat floats along this lake. The moon is like a disc. The moon is like a serpent. Egyptians depict the moon both as a disc and as a serpent. And now look carefully that the colour of the metal of the moon is different. This is electrum, an alloy of gold and silver. This is lunar metal or silver, but it is very expensive and rare in Egypt because they didn't have their own silver. They brought it from Anatolia. And electrum is lunar metal. So here in Egyptian works of art, even in jewellery, the symbolism of metal, the material in general, symbolises a magical message. And this is a necklace, a regeneration of life that should be here. Another form of Thoth is a sacred pavilion or baboon. It is a beautiful image. In the main temple of Thoth in Hermopolis, it is partially preserved. This is central Egypt. There are 4-metre quartz baboons, and inscriptions say that Zar-Menhotep III depicts himself in the image of a baboon to Thoth. He is a baboon in the service of the great god of wisdom. In the beginning, in the temple of Thoth in Hermopolis, there were 8 great spirits. What am I talking about now? Let's recall a legend. A white bird, the great Gagaton, shouted, "The world has arisen," but we know that everything has already been. And what was before the creation? What was before the creation? It consists of the great 8 spirits: Hek and Heket, infinity; Nun and Naunet, the original chaos; Gerik and Geriket, the unrecognizable darkness; Amon and Amonet, the hidden truth. A woman has a snake's head because they are connected with the original nature. A man has a frog's head because he was a frog before the sun was born. Each principle is embodied by androgyne, consisting of 2 parts, Amon and Amone. Amonet is not Amon's wife. It's his female half. It's a part of a single entity. Imagine that all of this was already embodied by the great 8 spirits, or as it's called in Greek, Agda, and only then was born the one like their king. The question is, how did the highest god of wisdom become the king of the universe. He became the king because he gave birth to the ritual of the magic word and principle by which they come into the world. He is also, in fact, a magical materializer in this universe, so it's a pity that the main temple is in terrible ruins, full of legends, and when you see that there's no half of the wall but there's a text on top, you understand what we've lost. Of course, a meeting with a god for an Egyptian is a celebration, and usually a celebration is what was called in Egypt a resurrection, when the doors of the temple and the statue of the god, not the main one but the secondary one, are taken out of the temple. And by the way, it's beautifully done by Nefru, the rising beauty. Here's the image of the king beaten by early Christians. He makes the resurrection of Latan, but I'm interested in something else. What should the goddess bring so that she leaves her residence and goes to the celebration? You see, the lady should be persuaded to leave, but she's not comfortable leaving because the temple is sacred and the world is profane and there's nothing to talk about. The green rectangle on the left is the golden mirror of the goddess, the silver mirror of the goddess, the golden diadem on the pedestal, then on the pedestal a float from the clepsydra, the symbol of time, the ritual sisters, the sacred milk, the vessel with the sacred wine, the lari with the jewels, and the big parade sister as a symbol of music. Gold, incense, drinks, everything changed, and the goddess agreed. I'll show you a close-up. She'll go to the celebration because at the moment of the celebration, the float will release the universal grace. She'll answer the human questions on the oracles. And there were such stories. Once a man fell asleep at the celebration. One official fell asleep. He woke up. He was sealed with the last words, and he had a question whether he should leave Memphis for promotion or not. And he didn't know what to do because he loved Phoebus. He loved his goddess Hathor, and for him this move was a bad choice, but seemingly profitable. And the goddess didn't just appear in his divine dream. She talked to him and told him not to leave his homeland, not to travel, not to leave his homeland. How do we know this? Because the goddess Hathor appeared to him in this divine dream. This is the temple of the woman Phron, Hatshepsut, in Deir el-Bahri, Luxor, the western coast. In ancient times it was called Djoser Djoseru, the most sacred of the sacred, because the main sanctuary was carved in the rock that symbolically depicted the great utopia of the goddess. It was used for the ritual of incubation of the divine dream. A man came, gave the goddess whatever he could. He had to bring some gifts, went to bed, asked for healing or an answer to a question. And you know, there's a huge amount of graffiti, just inscriptions on the wall of the cave from people. Well, it's all there. It's a closed area for tourists, but there's a lot of gratitude. It's a place of power that fulfills the requests that are there. The goddess's holiday is always a celebration, a solemn celebration. It's a fragment of a star, a piece of a star, a dragon from the Turin Museum. It's Ibad, a temple dance, acrobatics. This night was called the night of intoxication. And here's a very important principle. Ibad, mixed beer with an imitation of blood. So at this moment they come to necropolis, to their ancestors' tomb, take wine, beer, a snack, have fun, laugh, tell jokes. All the children are here. But one table has the best food for the ancestors, because only at this moment the family truly unites, because the ancestors are invisibly present here. And they get a commemoration, they say their prayers. You know, it's very important, because when you walk past the Egyptian tombs in Giza, near the pyramids, you walk around the private tombs, but you are a passerby. You who loves life who hates death, you who wishes good for your children, stop, say my name, say good things about me, commemorate me before the name of the great God, say for you the breath of life, and for me eternal life. And this phrase is repeated 1,000,000 times. And you commemorate your ancestors. The ancestors give through the system K, life forces, well-being to this kind. Well, the goddess Hathor is associated with sexuality. That's why there are naked people here. And yes, this fragment from the Metropolitan Museum, the narcissist is playing on a holiday, and the young man who has crossed the line is demonstrating everything he can at this moment. But there were some sexual moments at the festivities of the mother goddess, of course, and there is no strange immoral here. At the same time, Hathor is also a defender of all the deceased. Actually, this is a sarcophagus from the 11th century BC, and here at the bottom of the sarcophagus, where the mummy lay, there are signs of life and power, because Hathor imitated the Western goddess. She will protect everyone who enters her kingdom. And there are amazing stories when Hathor not only hears all the prayers, she is a very hearing goddess, but Hathor also easily moves between worlds. She has such a function. And sometimes the older gods ask her, well, you go to Earth, tell me. And there is another very interesting moment when the deceased cannot appear on the altar of sacrifice. Well, for example, they forgot their names, they have no memory, they don't make a sacrifice, they don't remember, they can't come, they're not called. And then they ask Hathor, and Hathor comes to the houses of the descendants who forgot their parents. Then he tells them in another world, and the ones who forgot them are left with a complaint in the name of the eternal God. And when they come to the funeral, they will be asked if they have no memory, because Hathor will testify what she saw on earth, a magnificent image. The Tsarist artist Sennacherib, his wife Nefertiti, they worship the gods of Osiris and the gods of Ra. So look, it seems like a simple image, but on the other hand, it turns out that they know the logic of the soul and body of the eternal God. These are Tsarist artists, and through such a simple image, high temple knowledge is shown. And then, a huge number of texts of ordinary people, and more or less noble people, at least those who could ask someone to write it down on stone. In the Voronezh Museum of Kramsky, where the oldest Russian collection of antiquities, there is such a stela with the face of a female hippopotamus, a goddess of birth, motherhood, femininity, protection of the mother. It's very simple, because a hippopotamus is the most terrible animal in the Nile Valley due to aggression, and a mother protects her child in such a way that a female hippopotamus will drown the boat. The meaning is very simple. At the bottom is the head of the Tsarist artist Ramos and his wife Mutamuya. They were rich people, and he, as God, erected monuments to the mother goddess because she was his beloved wife. She was infertile. For some reason, we know that he wanted a child from her. She could not have a child, and he was offered to replace her with the position of the eldest wife. But she was his beloved wife. He didn't do it. Unfortunately, all these monuments didn't help Stella, and then he took a foster child, a very talented boy, from the family of a poor potter, and he had the right to remember the names of his parents. And this boy gave birth to a great Tsarist poet, Ken Herhipashev, a famous intellectual from whom the most complete version. And he remembered Ramos and his foster mother and what his parents allowed him to remember. Different forms of stela, texts, letters to another world, a huge number of examples of how Egyptians communicate with the world of gods. We know all this, and all this is kept in different museums of the world. Not only in Philae, of course, the great gods, but of course, yeah, you want your heart to be protected and to have someone by your side. It must be Isis, it must be Hathor, it must be Tor, and this beautiful god, good, but smoky. But he's more omnipotent. This is actually a cosmetic vessel for eye lining. Right, Cole, this is black galanite paint. The eyes of Cleopatra are made with such a stack. From the 14th century to the new era, a vessel in the form of a bass is placed on a pillow, on the legs of a bed. It drives away evil. It takes away nightmares of the night. It is the main assistant of a person. It is the human word of God. It is also a mediator in such a connection with the heavenly world. A view of Karnak from the side of Deir el-Bahri. This is the temple of Hatshepsut, this incredible sky. And then it turns out that even here, this part of Ivan's necropolis, a very small part, how many places of power were venerated there? Specific chapels for performing certain rituals, for a connection with the world of gods, and of course, for connection with the world of others. The border was thin for them. A magnificent relief depicts a deceased nobleman with his wife, and here's a sacred tree. The goddess comes out of it, Nud, Kador, Isida, in different ways, and she draws water and food. The moment when the soul travels without breaking the bread, without drinking the water, there will be no strength for the full journey to the tomb. After breaking and drinking, you will forget your past experience. The past life will be forgotten. It is not needed for the subsequent existence. And here, in fact, these two are depicted twice, both as their earthly bodies and as their souls below, who drink water of immortality, water of true purity, and fly to the space of another world. The concept of Ba, the word for soul, is a more complex concept than the soul. For example, in Christian culture, it is very important for an Egyptian. An amazing monument from the Römer Museum, the soul greeting the sun, made of ivory and wood. It was covered with gold. It was robbed by thieves. As in ancient times, it was golden. And here is such a piercing pose, and this greeting, and this desire to get a ray of the sun. On the right is a papyrus from the Berlin Museum, a papyrus of Neferini. This is the sunrise. The trees of the new world are visible. The souls are standing. And look how the souls fly like birds, like a flock of sparrows. They fly to this tree because the sun is about to set. Ba, along with the body, which is the human essence. And there is also Ka, the vital force. A man has one Ka, a male Ka. A woman has Chemost. This is a female analogue of Ka. And the sun god has 14 Ka. That is, I have Ka, and the sun god has it. But the question is in the volume. This is the first thing. The second thing, according to the principle of Ka, Ba, and so on, the gods are subordinated. I'll give you one example. The sacred cat is Ba. The female form is Ba. The goddess Bastet. Bastet is Ba. The goddess Isida. Isida is Ba. The sun god. The sun god is Ba, the pre-eternal deity. And according to this system of subordination, this gigantic pantheon, which seems chaotic at first glance, is absolutely logical and systematic. Kai, the vital force of a man after his burial, remains in the tomb. All these famous offerings in the tombs are for Ka. If the soul of a man is justified in the afterlife, then Ka slowly goes, so to say, into the collection of the family, the vital force. The more righteous people in the family, the more descendants, because Ka is pulsating and there are more of it. Here is one of the holes in the tomb of the great vizier Mary Ruka. It's the 24th century BC, an altar, and this is a false door from another world, and Ka comes out of another world, Meri Ruka, in order to receive his sacrifice. This is probably the most famous image of Ka left from the ancient Egyptian tradition, the Cairo Egyptian Museum. This is the Ka of the king Awibakora. This is the 18th century BC. Originally, by the way, it was wooden, it was covered with paint, it was pale green, the colour of eternal life. But these encrusted eyes, this is the image of another world. There is a rainbow shell from a mountain crystal, and there is metal under it. This is absolute science fiction. On his head there is a symbol of Ka, two raised hands. Hands looking up to the sky, because life force comes from the sky, from the gods. The second version of the Ka image is an image of hugs. When you hug someone, you think of someone. You share life force. If someone close to you is sick, you hug him more often, you help him, you share life force with him. They can also share it with you. Think of someone hugging you. This is a very important point of Egyptian ritual practice. Ka can be not only in a statue, but in any image. According to the ancient Egyptian tradition, when a woman gives birth to a child, she gives birth to a baby. When a sculptor makes a statue, it is a mass. And when a sculptor makes a statue, he performs a 75-stage ritual of twisting of the lips to revive the statue. This is done with all statues. This is done with burial masks. But if it is a burial mask, we see a great masterpiece. I'll show you a few shots of it. Then there's a portrait similarity. But this is a wish of a person. This is a wish of a person. The creation of his ideal image. Can there be old age in an ideal image? No. Can there be traces of illness? No. Because this is a time you don't want to put an enemy in his image. You don't. That's why he is portrait-like. But without all these characteristics. An amazing thing is the burial mask of the great architect Maya, the architect of the casinos of Tutankhamun. This is the main monument of the Royal Museum of Art in Brussels. I will show it to you now. This is a fantastic masterpiece. Look at his face. Absolutely alive. This is a manly wig, a wide necklace. He also has a shibiu under his neck. This is a reward of gold and fame. This is a parade outfit. Egyptians like to do it in Peru. He has a water nymphaeum on his forehead, which is like a jewellery band. This is how it looks. This is also what is put on the mummy's head. And this is a K. And then the main episode, Inameya, the grave coat, the great scales, a fragment of the papyrus of Anarud, a museum in Turin. Anubis measures the accuracy of weighing. Behind the head of Anubis, there's a meskinit, a birthstone on which the mother of the sun was born. And there is also a figure filled with the feather of the goddess Maat. There are many other symbols, but I'm interested in what he has in his hands. 2 eyes and a mouth, because the eyes and the mouth are all that I did. Do you remember the verse? The whole lecture is based on it, and the mouth is all that I said and conceived. It's not just the weighing of the heart. The heart is on the right, the bowl of scales, and the figure of the goddess Maat, the wall, is on the left. Everything that I did, everything that I conceived. And you know, in one Egyptian text, the receiving of the son of the king of Heracleopolis, there's a fantastic image that for a short period of time do not hope for long years. They pass like a moment. They don't even spare the wise man. Everything that you did, there will be a pile of rubble next to you. Can you imagine? A pile, right? And everyone has a different pile, to put it mildly. And this image, of course, is amazing. I think it's more scary for a person than just the weighing of the heart. And of course, I'll show you a classic, a fragment of papyrus. This is one of the most famous books on the dead. Do you remember that the book on the dead is a calculation from the Arabic book Kitab al-Ma'id, the Book of the Dead Man, and the text itself in ancient times is called Arnupir et Emheru, the speech of the Exodus, the text of immortality. And here is Osiris in the centre of weighing. Ani and his wife Tutu are on the left. Baani, in the form of a board with a human head, is sitting on a pedestal. The great Pisces of the gods, Tot, is writing a verdict. Anubis is checking the correctness of the scales. The second figure under the scales next to Anubis is Shai, the god of good fate, the god of goodwill, the god of good deeds. Ani, the great Jajat, the heavenly court. The gods are sitting, and in the lower right corner is Amut, the devourer of hearts. In general, a person has 9 components of his essence. I won't go into it now, it's another 3 hours. But in addition to everything else, a person has Ah. Ah is the divine and emanating light of the spirit. It's a fragment of the divine in a person. A person is indestructible in terms of the divine spirit. In Egypt, there is no hell at all. They have no idea about hell. There is no such thing. But if this person has chosen the path of Esophet and Kucha stinks, this is a quote, then Amut devours his heart. He remains to exist in non-existence, in a black, deaf, infinite space. For an ancient Egyptian, not to be on the fields of green, not to be with the sun god, not to be with the ancestors of your kind, not to be a guardian of the sun, and there you need to help the gods. This is the highest punishment. You don't need Pan's unrefined oil and subsequent religious cultures. It's very primitive. But not to be with your own is scary. To be in the dark is scary. Not to see, not to hear, not to feel, but to experience everything. This is the punishment of the ancient Egyptians. But we won't destroy when the universe will end, turn into another form, and there will be a new universe. These Ahu, are multiple numbers in ancient Egypt. They will come there again, and they will be given a chance. But how long will the punishment of darkness and unknowingness last? Nobody knows, only the higher deities. This is how the Egyptians depicted the heart, the amulet, Ib. Ib is also one of the most important. Ib is the king of Susanus Fa, 10th century BC, and now you know everything. On the right is the king's name in oval, and this is Ra, Atum, and Hepri, 3 forms of the sun god. It's a hint that the heart would win in weighing, and it would see the gods of the sun again. Of course, this praise of the world of gods, a request to the world of gods, is not only the basis of a huge number of religious texts. I'll show you something. This is the same Maya. You've just seen Chumaska with his beloved wife. He had a wife, a singer, Merit. A lot of her pictures, the beauty was famous, and he's on one side of the victim, and on the other, Osiris, his mother Nut, Isidda, Neftida, the goddess of his circle, and he raises his hands with his wife in the position of prayer and the position of adoration, and he's on one side of the victim. The 13th century BC, the great mountain of the west, the Fivan rock, Osiris is sitting on the throne, and on one side the spirit, and on the other the eye of the choir hold pots with oil in which the lamps are lit. Once a year the Egyptians had a special ritual, and it was desirable that even if a person was ill, not to hire a priest, but to go alone, as they thought, with a great desire of the deceased. The ancestors could be seen, but only the one who was bound by blood could see them. They were asked for something. The request sent by the descendants to another world, to their parents, is fulfilled. The main request is made at the cemetery. By the way, this is in the Russian ritual sorcery culture. I think you know that. And here it all comes from ancient Egypt. Did the ancient Egyptian doubt? Yes, he was a living person. There is a text called the Song of the Orpheus. In general, usually on the pyramids, that Orpheus is a man, often blind. This was his only art. This is the relief of the 14th century when he grew up, a blind Orpheus with a musician next to him. And this song says that no one has returned yet, I think. There are a lot of texts from that world, but it's scary to live, and we don't know what's there. Let's make a party now. Sit down, have fun, cheer up. Let's sit down, drink, and celebrate. This is to the question of the absence of dogma. Can you imagine what was said out loud? And there is an answer to the Song of the Orpheus. What is the blind Orpheus telling there? How dare he slander the afterlife? If he doesn't know how to return, we do. Don't listen to the Orpheus. But in the ancient Egyptian society, the Orpheus and the answer to the Orpheus could be heard, because this is a culture devoid of dogma, and any opinion can be expressed. At the end of the lecture, the last small block, I left one more very important deity. This is Bohemond the Great, the ruler of Ivanovo, and in front of you is the triad of Karnak, Bohemond with his high falcon feathers, the crown of Shute. On the other side is his wife, the goddess Mut, patroness of the power of the Tsarites, and in the centre is Ramses II, who acts here as their son. Bohemond was originally born in Hermopolis. Remember Ammon and Ammonet, the sacred ones. He became such an imperial god in the Phoenicians because the Phoenicians became the capital of the Egyptian kingdom for many centuries. I will tell you a little about him and his triad. If Ammon, in the translation of the sacred, is the closest but still recognizable for a person formed to the eternal God, then his wife Mut is an amazing goddess. Mut literally means mother in Egyptian. Her sacred bird is the mane. This is what is in front of you now. The mane protects the thing of the Tsar in the Leiden Museum. Why is the mane the mother? I will remind you who does not know this story. It is a great one. The mane is the mother of a terrible predator which flies to the battlefield. A dead body lies, the mane comes, eats the dead, and gives birth to a live egg. The egg goes through a cycle, bursts. A new life comes out. A new life goes through a cycle, dies, came, ate the mane. The power of the mother of the gods is such that only she, having eaten the corpse, is able to give birth to a live egg. That is why in the Egyptian language the word mother is spelled in the form of the hieroglyphic mane. This is a symbol of the goddess Mut, which has the most secret understanding of what life is. Ammon's son and Mut in the tribes is Khonsu. The name of the god Khonsu is translated as stranger. This is another god of the moon. And this is where the highest sacrifice of the gods arises, because the human nature of the king prevents him from associating with the gods. And he often lacks the vital strength to keep this great contact. And the goddess Mut, according to the text, delays the birth of her child and gives his vital strength to the ruling Egyptian king. Khonsu is an embalmed embryo, and due to the fact that he is an embalmed embryo, he hangs between the worlds. He is the executioner of the gods. He is the main predictor. He is the most incredible exorcist. That is, when the gods were possessed, this is the temple of the god of the moon. And on the one hand, he is able to deprive a person of terrible demons, but if he comes in an immortal form, ambivalence, he is the one who eats the bread baked from human bodies. And on the other hand, he is a plague and all incurable diseases. Like Usekmet, he is Khonsu, the god of the moon. He is the third deity, the great angry baby in the Evanian triad. I promised you a hymn, and I'm going to read it now, because in order to understand the content of this hymn, you had to listen to everything I've been reading for the last 2 hours. So we have the great Vishmeritza, among which there is Ammon. We have the bird, the lord of the earth. He also has the epithet Tatanin, the rising earth, because when the waters are low, the earth rises above the waters. We have Ra, which you considered the visible form of the deity. You also know Danun, the great Gagatun, the white bird. We have disassembled it. The Vesmeritza, there are 8 holy gods in Hermopolis, and in Heliopolis, in the city of the sun, there is the Vesmeritza. We'll probably understand the rest along the way. This is the laden hymn to Ammon. It's a great national hymn for the ancient Egyptians. It's the 13th century BC. You won't find it anywhere yet, but we're going to listen to it today. The god Ammon, 14th century BC, the Metropolitan Museum. The Vesmeritza of the gods was your first manifestation. Until you finished it, you were one. Your body was a secret among the elders, and you kept yourself secret in the name of your secret Ammon, in the head of the gods. You created your manifestation in the form of Tatanin to be with the ancestors in your original time. Your beauty rose as if to your mother. You arose as one in heaven, affirming yourself as the Son. You, coming again to the fathers who created their sons to create an inheritance perfect for their children. You gave birth to a manifestation out of nothing. The world was not empty from you in the beginning. All the deities in existence came into existence after you. 9 goddesses of the gods were created from your body. Each god united with your body. He is the essence of your image. You arose first, came into existence in the beginning. Your name is hidden from the space of the gods. The oldest, more revered than all of them, Tatanin, who created himself as a bird, the fingers of his body, the 8 goddesses of the gods. He arose as the sun from the moon so that he could be rejuvenated. He arose from the mouth of his mouth as Atum, Shu and Tifnut, united in manifestation. He arose on his throne as his heart desired. He whose powers exist for him all, who possess the kingdom of his time, eternal and infinite, who came into existence as, in truth, the Lord unique. Light came into existence with his eternal manifestation, with all that exists, and Nini in the days of Blagogove. He resounded in a voice as the great Gagatun, coming to the earth, which he created for himself when he was alone. He began to speak in the midst of silence. He opened everyone's eyes, forcing them to see him. He began to shout when the world was motionless. His cry was raised when there was no one else near him, so that he could give birth to what exists and what gives him life, so that he could give everyone the knowledge of the way to move his feet. Their hearts live when they see him in the form of his active 9-headed Great One, one who began creation in the first times, sacred, who came into existence in the beginning and whose origins are unknown, unrecognized. There was no God who came into existence before him, and there was no God with him who would cover his appearance. There was no mother who created him. There was no father who conceived him, who would say, "This is what belongs to me." He who created the egg of his own, the power of the secret birth, who created his beauty, the most divine God, who came into existence alone. Every God came into existence after he began himself. God with secret appearances, with a sacred image. God, perfect in many forms. All the gods are proud that he was born, making himself great in his beauty, prolonging his divinity. The sun itself is equated with his body. He is great in Heliopolis. He is in Memphis, named Titian, the sacred god rising from the abyss, who came out for people so that they would follow him. Other forms of his eightfoldness, pre-eternal of the pre-eternals, born of the sun, as a perfect atom, he completed himself, becoming one body with them. He is the Lord of the universe, who began that which in existence came into existence. His soul, they say, is the one who is in heaven. He is the one who, they say, is in the world of the tombs, the first of those who rise in the east. His soul is in heaven. His body is in the west. His image is in Heliopolis, in the south, in Thebes, raising his appearances. He is one. He is sacred. He is one. He is eternal. He keeps himself away from them. He is hidden from the eyes of the gods in such a way that his essence is unknown. He who is above heaven, beyond the world of the tombs, with his true appearance, unknown to his gods, with his true image, unrecognized on the scrolls, nothing in truth is revealed about him. The greatest to be known, the most powerful to be recognized. Here are the people, when his name is pronounced in knowledge or in ignorance, for there is no God who would call him by his name. He is like a spirit, a secret name, who has loved his secrecy. This was heard by a few, because it is a liturgical hymn for the manifestation of the Spirit in the cult statue of the god Amun in Karnak. This is a famous Leiden hymn. This is a scroll. It is bigger. And imagine that it is sung by a great priest under the altar in the Club of Latin at the moment of the opening of the doors to the cult statue. All that we have discussed here for 2.5 hours, do you understand that now you understand who this Athenian is, why there is a soul in the West, and so on? This whole system exists in this hymn. Why do I say that reading Egyptian religious texts for no reason is pointless? Because we won't even understand what we know. There is this incredible heavenly world, and there is an amazing earthly world. In the Egyptian religion, the main priest, the main mediator, the main organizer of the ritual is the pharaoh. And in any temple, the high priests lead the service from the name of the king. And they cannot lead it from their own name for one simple reason. There is Remish. These are people. There's Ahu. These are good ancestors. There is Necheru. These are gods. There is Nezu. These are kings. The king is a special category. It's not just a leader. It's a creature of dual nature. Because at the moment of the coronation, a simple earthly person becomes the god of the choir. They combine in the body, and this gives him an opportunity not to be a stranger to the gods. And then one very important thing happens, which I suggest you think about, because the gods give the king Chainang the breath of eternal life, and he is the one who is in charge of all the living. The king is in charge of the life force of his people, and he transmits the life given to him by the gods to everyone. That is, if he is an illegitimate king, his people have no breath of life from the gods. Why was the unworthy pharaoh, or were they very afraid of conspiracies when an unappointed person could come to the throne for this position? Just 2 words about the king. But first, one more important point I almost forgot. In the Louvre, Stella Chia, he was a king's poet, but he knew a lot. And here, look, here's Amun. At the top is Ra'ah and Ptah. And in the era of Ramses the Great, the idea of how the Egyptian idea is transformed will sound for the first time. The point is that there are all the gods, but only 3 are visible, but they cannot be recognized. His visible form is Ra, his body is Ptah, his soul is sacred. This is Amun, Ra, Ptah, 3, but he is one. This is the concept of triad. I don't want to say another word so as not to interfere with culture. This is the concept of triad spoken in Egypt in the middle of the 2nd millennium BC about the recognizable and unrecognizable forms of God. Karnak. Let's walk around the house of Amun. There's a wonderful Japanese girl so that you can imagine all 21.5 metres of the central colonnade of the Temple of Amun. Hypostyle hall 134 columns, central nave 21.5, side rows of the nave columns 16. The central papyruses were open because there were windows there. They are all covered with the sun. This is the moment of creation. The side columns are all in buds because there is darkness there. The world is not created. This hall is larger than the entire cathedral of St. Peter in Rome. This is only one of the halls of the Egyptian National Temple. I will not say that everything is covered with texts and prayers. It was painted, and there are a lot of traces. Small holes were wooden plugs, and then it was covered with gold. That is, the columns were still covered with gold, and such texts as the hymn that I read to you, the Luxor Temple of Amun in Thebes. We will walk a little along it. Ali Sphinx leads to the pylon, royal statues, obelisks, absolutely incredible colonnades. But I did not come here for no reason. In the Luxor Temple, there's a place called Perms, the birthplace, which tells about who the Tsar is. By the example of Amenhotep III, the builder of this temple, according to the St. Petersburg Sphinxes, you know him very well. Let's walk a little, let's go inside these incredible colonnades. These are all stone imitations of the Abet, the pre-eternal swamps where the world was created. Here's such a room. Once the god Amun decided to take an earthly wife for himself, and he sent Hathor to the earth to find the most worthy as the goddess of love. She went around all the lands and all the worlds and accidentally found out that the most beautiful, perfect and pious woman on earth was Mutamuya, the wife of the Egyptian pharaoh Thutmose IV, as it was reported. And then the god Amun came to a resting place, accepting the image of her husband, and only by the incredible aroma of the blessed world did the Queen Mutamuya realize that it was not so simple, and that another creature appeared to her in her husband's body. Now you see the relief of the divine marriage. On the left is Mutamuya, on the right is the god Amun, who extends the signs of life to her. Their bed is the sky, their feet are held by the goddess keeper. After a while the head of Ibis came to the Queen Mutamuya. He stretched out his hand and said to her that she was pregnant with the Son of God, and she bore it and was happy with her child. Then there is a huge maternity bed. All these reliefs protect her spirit. All this can be seen, and she gives birth to a baby, the future king of Menhotep III. And as a sign that it was his child, it was so in the Egyptian house, that as the child was brought to the father, if he takes it on his lap, it means he has recognized it. And Amun takes the king and his K, his life force. He is the head of the living and says, "This is my son." This is a condition so that later this earthly baby boy at the time of the coronation would receive the God Horror inside and would rule as the legal little son, as a reflection of the great son on this earth. This relationship between the father and the son, in the case of the king, is shown in a very different way. This is Amun. Before him is the king, Korem Kep. This is the 14th century, the Luxor Museum. We know that in the Egyptian art, the status of a person is reflected by their height, size. This is the ruler of Egypt. But there, Amun, there were not enough frames for the height in a huge crown. But at the same time, what you see, this gesture with the palm, this is Satepsa. This is the establishment of magic protection. That is, he protects the king through which the divine principles pass to heaven. At the time of the coronation, this is now a relief from a museum, from the late temple of Ramses the Chikid. An amazing thing happens. The Egyptians had an idea about the great Perseus. This is the heraldic tree, Eyeshade. The god Atum, the god of the evening sun. On the right, the goddess Seshat, the goddess of math, and the royal annals, and her husband Thoth write down the new name of the king on the leaves of Perseus and Ishid. Because when the mother and father gave birth to Tutankhamun, he was with this name. At first he had a slightly different name, Tutankhatun, living likeness of god Atum, then Tutankhamun, living likeness of god Amun. This is his personal name. No one and never could name the king by his personal name. This is a sacrilege, because after the coronation he is a son of the sun Neferpur. This Neferpur is the name of the throne, one of the 5, in which the priests and oracles have laid down the message to this king, what they want from his kingdom, what choir he should be. Neferpur is the king of creation. He should create a lot. And Ramses II, he is the son of Sermatros of Tepenra. Ra is strong, true, chosen for Ra, and so on. And this new throne name of the king intermediate is inscribed on the hieroglyph. This is the last frame of the great Sphinx of Giza, when in 1817 the Italian archaeologist and adventurer Caviglia excavated it. The victims of the Sphinx were the last petrified ashes from the last victims brought to him in Roman times. Between his feet there was a sanctuary. The walls were taken to the Louvre and placed in the basement of the Louvre. The sanctuary was called Setapet, the chosen one. And there was the last stage of the Egyptian king's coronation ritual. Because the great Sphinx of Giza, as one of the incarnations of the sun god, and at the same time of the ancestors of the Egyptian king, in this Setapet, it conveyed to the earthly man the divine nature obtained at the moment of the ritual, the right not only to rule the living, not only to serve the ancestors, but also to talk to the gods on whom the life of ancient Egypt belonged.